You're listening to Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Today is Thursday, February 6th, 2014, 37 days into the new year. We are live, as always, from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. Rainy, cold Burbank. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, you know how I start off every show. Started off with a salute to the proud men and women in uniform out there fighting the good fight for us all around the world. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you can't hear me right now. Let's get this show cracking, everybody. Thank you for coming in. Happy birthday to Axl Rose. Axl Rose is 52 years old today. The Rebel, 52. He's a grown-up. Our dead guy birthday of the day, we have two. Bob Marley would have been 69 years old today. And Ronald Reagan. Love him, hate him, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. He was a great president. He would have been 103 years old. Never forget when they did the funeral here in Los Angeles and how the people lined the streets for miles for that man. Great president. Ronald Reagan would have been 103 years old today. All right, let's get this show going. We got a good one tonight, as always. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You know where the links are. Go and follow. Facebook, go and like. YouTube, go and subscribe. All of the links are right there. If you're at artbell.com right now, that means you're probably on the Fade to Black page, looking at my picture. Well, right below that are those links. Go follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. But stay in touch with the show. The show is all about you. Tonight, we'll have open lines in the third segment, and we'll take your calls for our guest tonight. And the number, as always, 323-825-5045. If you want to Skype in, that is Fade to Black 14. You can email me throughout the show, as always. I read all of the email, and the good stuff gets into me, and I will read it on the air. You can do that to Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. You can do it all over the website. As you know, we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. The bumper music tonight, as always, is Doug Aldrich. Thank you, Doug. We have posted up a new virtual viewer. It's of the Mayan temples. You can go and check that out on the contacts page. It is very cool. 3D, high-def, fly-around 3D virtual viewer. You've got to go check that out at jimmychurchradio.com. All right, the new forums page is awesome. Got a bunch of new stuff up there, and after the show tonight, like I always do, I'll go jump into the forums and hang out with everybody. At the bottom of the page, there are some new pics on the UFO landing pad. We posted some stuff yesterday that was just released from MUFON. Now, I said that I would reserve my comments for tonight. And when you read the MUFON report, which I read it last night, I'm not going to do it again tonight. But when you read the MUFON report, it's like a generic cut and paste job of a UFO sighting. And if I'm a MUFON guy and I'm out there trying to investigate stuff and I get a report like this and I look at those photographs, I don't know if I'm submitting anything. And I could be way off base here. But when you go over to the UFO landing pad at jimmychurchradio.com, it's on the forums page. Just scroll down below the forums and take a look at those 5 pictures from MUFON. It's obvious that there's 2 little spots on the camera lens, and you can tell that those spots don't move around, they don't change direction, they don't move, they don't do anything. They're exactly the same in all 5 photographs. And if they're supposed to be moving across the sky, then something's going to move, and those do not. I could be wrong, and I really want to hear your comments on it. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Go look at those 5 photographs. All right. Stan's blog. We've got the Lost Indus Civilization. Go check that out. Over at artbell.com, by the way. Saw this today. The crater on Mars. The new crater on Mars. Go and check that out. It is huge, cool, fantastic photographs. And it's about time we see something new on the red planet. And it's over there at artbell.com. Okay? It's called The New Crater on Mars. Great photograph. Check it out. All right, now I am ready. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, Nancy Talbot will be here in the studio, and we will be talking crop circles all night. Well, we got a little surprise at the end of the show, too. Got a lot of stuff we're going to cover. Just stay with us. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Shoot me an email tonight. Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We'll be taking your calls later. 323-825-5045. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We got a good one tonight, folks. Don't touch that mouse. I will be back with Nancy Talbot right after this. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. It is a cold and rainy day. Night here in Burbank, California. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Keep that coming. Call us later, 323-825-5045. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Got a great show lined up tonight. As always, it's time to get educated. That's what we are here for. Nancy Talbot.
Talbot.
Talbot. Nancy Talbot is the president of BLT Research Team Incorporated, a nonprofit U.S. corporation which, for more than 20 years, has utilized the expertise of multiple professional scientists to examine remnant physical evidence recovered primarily from crop circle sites as well as from UFO trace evidence cases and other paranormal events. 3 papers published in peer-reviewed journals have presented BLT's crop circle findings, the only scientific information currently available on this subject. Ms. Talbot has lectured widely in the U.S. and Europe and participated in multiple TV shows, documentaries. She is an author with W.C. Levengood of the 1999 paper Dispersion of Energies in Worldwide Crop Formations. I would like to welcome to the show right now from Cambridge, Massachusetts, Nancy Talbot. Nancy, how are you?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Your name, your whole life you've been hearing Talbot, haven't you?
No, Talbot County, Maryland is where I came from. And down there, they know how to pronounce it. And in England, they pronounce it Talbot. But in the North, they say Talbot.
All right. Now, really quick, I start off every show the same way, and I'll do it here now with you, which is tonight we're going to have a conversation. Tonight it's going to be, a little more technical than it normally is with my guests because of your research and the scientists and everything else that the way that you present and study not only crop circles but the paranormal and UFOs. And so it's going to get a little bit deep for our listeners at times. I will ask Nancy now, like I did before the show. It's going to be tough, but we'll try to keep it as simple as possible.
It's not rocket science. People think it is, but it isn't. It's very easy to understand. I promise you.
Well, what's funny, Nancy, is, and I have this conversation so much, but I'm just a guy. And so if I can understand it, then everybody else can. So
exactly. That's exactly my point.
We'll see. Your information and your website is very in-depth and incredible, and we'll get to all of that in a second. But before we jump into the stuff, let's just start off with you a little bit and how you got interested in this subject, because that's a story in itself. We're going to take the first hour here. We will run that commercial free so we can take our time. But then I want a little bit of crop circle history too, not only for myself, but for everybody else. And so let's start there. How did you get your interest in this?
I went to the kiosk in Harvard Square one night, late, I think it must have been 1989 or 90. And was looking for something on the international press to read, and saw some magazines from England with photographs of crop circles on the cover. I'd never heard of them, and something grabbed my attention, and I took one of the magazines along with other stuff I was buying, and got home and was reading, and I instantly was kind of fascinated because in this article written by George Wingfield, one of the very early British crop circle researchers, he had mentioned that an American scientist was already paying some attention. And I knew enough to know that it's very rare that a bona fide scientist, pays any attention to these strange things. And I myself was curious anyhow. And so I called George, the guy who'd written the article, and made a deal with him. At that time, I had been producing outdoor festivals, bluegrass and country music festivals. Mm-hmm. And so I had a network all over the Northeast. When I would book these bands, I'd book them all over the place. And George wanted to come into the States to do lectures. And I wanted to go to England and become introduced to everybody that I needed to be and brought up to speed very quickly, So we made a deal. And I said, okay, I'll book you a tour. I'm coming to England. You take me around and make sure I know everything I've got to know to get started here. And that's how it started.
And so what, okay, before we get, I want to know exactly what happened when you went over there and what you saw, because it must have been, a real eye opener, seeing everything firsthand and speaking to somebody like that. But what is the history of crop circles? I mean, we've got the recent modern history. Is there something that was documented?
I'm not an authority in that area, and I'll give you a brief overview. On the BLT website, there is a section that is called Other Facts.
Okay.
And I've given a much more complete background there, taken from other people's work. Essentially, it appears that as far back as the 1500s in England, there were reports by scientists at that time in England who observed on their estates or farms things which appear to be descriptions of crop circles. In the 1600s, we have a guy named Robert Plot, a scientist at the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford, who also had taken notice of these markings in his fields and done some preliminary sorts of examinations. So there is some evidence that indicates that long ago that there were sporadically, at least, things that we would now call crop circles appearing in the fields in England. We also know from the early 1900s, and this is in many countries, the US, Canada, Poland, Germany, England, many places where I've been and interviewed the farmers, there are historical accounts of people's grandparents who owned these properties, for generations, and who also reported occasionally finding what we would now call crop circles. The current flap, the one that attracted my attention, I'd never heard of all this, of course, was started in the late 1970s and 80s, with the circles becoming slowly more complex and also more frequent, I think, until about the late 1980s, when there was a sudden just blossoming of the complexity, the early 90s. And some of these photos of these incredibly intricate things then were reaching the covers of various magazines. So the current flap, if you're going to call it that, has apparently been going on since perhaps the late 1970s, right up to the present day.
And when the original, flap, I don't like that word, but you used it first, so let's just stay there. When this current flap started in the late 70s, with that first run of crop circles, were those, because there's a definite line that separates either it's a real crop circle, a paranormal type of creation that we're going to talk to in a second. Paranormal's another weird word to use.
I don't use that word at all.
Exactly, but and then we have the hoaxes. So
you've got man-made events and you have non-man-made events.
There you go. Thank you. So that first run of circles that popped up in the late 70s, were those man-made or non-man-made?
I can't tell you because there was no testing done back then.
Okay, this is what I want everybody to understand really quick as we get started. You and your team at BLT, it's all about the science. And I want to make it has been, but we are now working where the field is enlarging to include the nature of consciousness, because more and more there are indications, very clear indications, that consciousness of some kind, and I can't tell you what kind because I don't know, right? But
that a consciousness other than our own, my own, your own, is probably involved with at least some of the circles and perhaps the entire phenomenon. But for the first 10, 12, 13, 14 years, it was straight, science, mainstream science.
Right. With you and your team, when you hear about a crop circle anywhere around the world, and you take a look at a picture, I'm just referring to you. We'll get to your team in a second. when you see a picture, do you know right away if it's man-made or not?
No.
You can't tell.
The only way to tell that I know of that's reliable is to do the actual plant and soil work and then look at the results.
Right. Now, I want everybody that's listening.
I do have an educated guess from time to time, but...
Well, yeah, some of it is obviously really nice urban art, by somebody very creative. There's no doubt about that. But, okay, so I need everybody to go to jimmychurchradio.com. What we have set up on the homepage, we try to do this as often as we can. If you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, we've got a few galleries set up for the show tonight for Nancy's presentation, and we'll guide you through what you're looking at because there's a lot of information here. Now, before we get started into the science of this, Nancy, I want you to, I'd like everybody to go to the middle gallery, which is a gallery that I created. It just says crop circles. Okay, your gallery's on the top, science, and then the NVIDIA crop circle is on the bottom. But in the middle is a very simple gallery of 10 pictures, just entitled crop circles. Now, the reason why I picked these myself today, because these are all very famous crop circles that most people have seen and know immediately what they're looking at and probably where they have seen it. And so, Nancy, I just want you to we'll take a couple of seconds here and run through these 10 photographs, and just tell me if each because I know you're probably familiar with each one, and tell me if
first of all, Jimmy, the BLT research group has never intended. We never intended it. It wasn't our point at all to become the authorities on individual crop circles.
Right.
Our work is interested in trying to discover the nature of the energies involved and, if possible, the source of those energies.
Right.
And so we don't make pronouncements about anything that we haven't worked on. And this gallery that, unfortunately, you put up here, if you go to the first crop formation that you have on the left, it's one that occurred at Alton Barnes in, I think, 1990, maybe it was 89 or 90. That was before we started our work.
Right.
So I have no notion.
Okay.
The second one, the triangular-looking thing, Levengood, the biophysicist in Michigan, who's the L in BLT,
right,
and he's recently died. But at that time, he had already begun to get a few samples, and Pat Delgado, one of the very early British researchers, had sent him some samples from that circle.
Exactly, okay.
And according to Levengood's work, he felt that he did observe significant changes in those plants. However, that formation was not sampled adequately to 100% say, yes, it was or wasn't. And this George Wingfield, who's, again, one of these very early researchers, swears that that thing is man-made, and he knows all the details about who made it. All I can tell you is you got to talk to George and hear his story,
right,
and or accept the fact that it wasn't sampled in the kind of depth that we do,
right,
to be able to be 100% certain.
Right. And
so that's a question mark.
Okay, that's exactly why I'm at. And what about the next one, the one that's in the middle of the top row?
Sampled, so I don't know.
Okay, and then the really cool alien pick, number 4.
Okay, this one, most unfortunately, you have to realize that it costs thousands of dollars to sample any one of these formations correctly.
Yeah.
And this formation occurred at the very end of the season when all of the money we had to do the in-depth sampling was gone. However, I did have my best field worker in the UK, because we have them all over the world, but the guy who's the best in the UK went into this one for me because I knew it was going to be, people were really going to carry on about it.
Right.
First point to know about it is it occurred in a place where crop circles do not usually occur. Therefore, there were no flyovers of that area, and it could have taken weeks to do And no one would have been the wiser because the regular crop circle tours, checking for circles, never goes in this place, Crabwood Farm.
Uh-huh.
So we don't know how long it took to make, number one. Number two, the crop circle field worker, mine, who's very reliable, did go through it very carefully because there have been reports that some of these lines that you see were so fine they were only 2 inches wide. That is incorrect. When the crop is old, the seed heads flop over.
Right.
And so from the air, the space looks a lot narrower than it actually is.
Oh, I got you.
Those pathways were at least 5 to 6 inches wide. That is big enough for a human foot, you see.
Right.
Thirdly, he saw no elongated apical nodes, the top nodes. That's the most reliable indicator we have. He could see none. Number two, expulsion cavities, the holes blown out farther down the node length, the node stems,
right,
were not present either. Now, I don't know because we didn't sample it, and so ultimately you can't say with any scientific, authority.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what I do know, and am strongly, it's as strong a feeling as I can have about one thing that's going on in England, and that is that there are people, and I don't know who they are, who do not want the general public to know that the circle phenomenon generally is real.
Why do you think that is?
Let me finish. If these individuals were intent upon skewing the public opinion, what would be an easy way to make people laugh at the whole thing? You put a picture of a so-called alien face into the field, immediately among many people then dismissing the phenomenon because they think it's impossible.
Right. Make a joke of it.
Yes, make a joke. And I suspect, although I don't know for sure, that this particular one is one of those. There have been several others done like that, not like this face, but done for exactly the same reason, where we know, at least in one case, that it was man-made. And it was, again, made to ridicule anybody who might be actually trying to seriously, look at these things.
I don't know how you deal with that either, because that must be a constant battle.
You just ignore it. It costs money, unfortunately, when we sample them. It's a pain in the neck because it wastes money.
Right.
But, it comes with the territory.
Okay.
Now, the one next to it, the green, that one was not sampled.
Okay.
On the second line, the next two were not sampled.
Okay.
The big, fabulous one at Milk Hill, those multi-spirals.
I love that crop circle.
One was sampled. And again, it wasn't sampled quite as thoroughly as it ought to be because that thing was enormous.
Right.
And it probably would have cost, I don't know, $4 or $5 grand to get that thing properly sampled and all those soil, everything dried down. It just would have been a huge job. But elongated nodes were found throughout. Expulsion cavities were found throughout. And also, very interestingly, and you can't tell this from the overhead photo, that field is not flat. It's undulating. You could stand in certain parts of that and not see the other parts.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Then,
you can kind of
this.
Yeah, you can kind of see that. Yeah, I see it now that you described that. Yeah.
You can only really see it from a low shot. But what was absolutely fascinating, and here again, the field workers, my really good ones, were working on this. And I had them do one thing that we could do, and that was to measure many of the circles on the slopes. And what I had multiple diameters measured in each case to see if, in fact, the circles on the slopes were actually circles or were they ellipses.
Mm-hmm.
All of the circles, large or small, that were on a slope were ellipses. Now, when you take an overhead photo and what you see is a circle,
I got
looking
you.
right down at it.
It's a circle.
What that implies is that the energy responsible for causing that circle was coming straight down. And when it hit a sloping area, it created an ellipse, not a circle.
And if it would have been man-made, somebody would have had to have done some insane math
Exactly.
to set that up to do one, create the illusion, that it's a circle from above.
Oh my God! To do that with every single one of those circles that's on a slope.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible point. And I will say this particular one, when you look at this as opposed to pick out any of these other man-made ones here. These were done for art, and these were done to impress their friends. I get that. But when you look at something like this, there's a message behind this. There's something. This is trying to say something.
It's a really simple message. It's, hey, wake up.
Yeah,
hey.
Right. And I think you understand.
Anyhow, so the next one, and this makes me very unpopular with many crappies, is absolutely man-made. It was the favored circle of the year that year. Most of the crop circle people, absolutely positive it was genuine. The reason I know it wasn't was because one of our field workers here in the United States, an older man who does not have his name in the public arena, very modest guy, was in England that summer just, to see the crop circles.
Right.
And when that thing occurred, that didn't occur in one stage. Some of these crop circles nowadays, occur in 2 or 3 stages. When that circle first went down, it didn't look like that. And nobody in England at the time, except for the hoaxers, knew that there was more coming. And so my friend and then 2 Brits, whom I also know, had gone into that circle around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, just when it's starting to get dark in southern England. Mm-hmm. In the summer, you've only got 5 hours of darkness in southern England. Well, they went into it separately, these 2 guys, the 2 Brits, and then my friend from, where's he from? He's from Nashville, actually. They went in to simply take photos because often in new crop circles, if you take your camera and take photos, you're going to get unusual pictures. Weird things appear, balls of light and stripes of light and stuff like that. And so they went in solely for that purpose, having absolutely no clue that there was more coming.
Right.
And these 3 guys are in there, 2 in one part, and then my Nashville friend in another. And they're taking pictures and waiting and hoping they're going to see light balls or something.
Right.
And here come 5 young, strapping British boys.
No.
With planks and their ropes. And march right in and set about finishing what you see there in that picture.
How old were they? I mean, were they artists?
Well, it's up to you. They were guys, making crop circles. And they apparently were in their 20s or 30s, according to my Nashville friend. He didn't have any idea who they were, and he was a little scared because he was maybe 60 at the time, and these guys were young enough, and there were so many of them, and one of them did come up to him and say to him, "You're not supposed to tell anybody," which made him feel just a little bit threatened,
Of course.
And so he did. He only stayed there for another 15 or 20 minutes, and he watched them. It was that outer ring that was none of those little details were in there. And he was watching them make that. And because this one guy had come up and told him he wasn't supposed to tell anybody, he only waited another 15 or 20 minutes, and then he left because he just didn't feel comfortable. But in the morning, what had been a fairly simple and elegant-looking design had turned into this. And my personal sense is, I don't know the first part was man-made because I don't have any witnesses to that.
Okay.
But if the second part was man-made, my common sense tells me probably the first part was too.
It was funny that, it's so hard to bust somebody, and you had your team there, and it was just cold busted, wasn't it? They just...
Well, they were witnesses to the second part being made. Now you can, again, some people choose not to believe facts.
Right.
That's a fact. And you can take it or not as you please, but some people choose not to. And then the last picture also was not sampled. You have to remember that there are often In some years, there have been hundreds, but there are 60, 70, 80 of these every summer in England.
Right.
And with the amount of money it takes to properly sample, and this is thousands of plants, and then do all the work, there's no way we can do every single one. And we have a protocol, or I had a protocol while we were doing this, and I was the only person in the world who knew this protocol. I decided, Levengood, who was doing the plant work, didn't know how I was doing it. John Burke, who's the B in BLT, he didn't know how I did it, and none of the field workers knew. Every year I would change the numbering and which one I was going to sample. One year I would decide, okay, every fifth one I hear about, we're going to sample. The next year it might be every 10th one I heard about, or every third or seventh or whatever. And it was totally arbitrary, and I was the only person in the world who knew. People would report them, and I would only tell them to sample when it came to be the right number. And I did that on purpose to avoid any indication of sampling bias on the part of these field workers.
So when you, and I kind of asked this question earlier, but when, and I understand now when you have, literally almost 100 crop circles each season that you have to figure out because you can't do them all, obviously.
We can't. I mean, if we had a lot of money, we could, but
right. So there's got to
tell your listeners, send money.
And there has to be a way to determine what you're going to investigate or not. And so what you're telling me, just looking at photographs isn't enough to determine. You just have to a random way of selection is about the best way to get it done. There's just so many.
Well, that's the most scientific way. Now, there are people who will tell you that they can tell by looking. I'm telling you I can't. And I know the science, and I know a lot more than just the science, and I would never personally look at a picture and 100% guarantee that it was fake, unless I saw it being made.
Right.
Then I tell you.
Well, let's jump into the science really quick before we have so many other things that we need to cover tonight, but all of it is going to stem off of how you do your research. So let's talk about that now. And in the top,
go up above to the science section. There's some pictures there.
Yeah, let's go to the top gallery, everybody. Just go over to jimmychurchradio.com. There's a science gallery there. There's 10 photographs. Now, accompanying all of this, Nancy, you can interject when you need to, but over at the BLT research website, there are plenty of scientific charts and graphs and PDF files, all of the data for all of the research and everything that is submitted for peer review is all over at BLT. There was so much stuff that I just couldn't get it all here tonight, and I just didn't want to overwhelm everybody with information. But if you need to, Nancy will tell you which photograph has charts that can go along with it. Let's start. Nancy, you want to start? Which photograph do you want to?
The first photograph that they need to look at is the fourth one in the top row. A lovely gal in a red sort of top.
Okay.
Carrying a whole bunch of plant samples and a bag full of soil samples.
I've got that
and her
picture.
Boyfriend behind her with his arms filled with samples.
What are they doing?
They've just finished. That is a tiny little bit of what they sampled in a particular formation. And they're coming out of the field, bringing it to the car, because it has to then go to a barn, and all the plants are then hung up to dry. The picture to the left of that shows you some of the plant samples. In this case, it's from a formation in Holland that I've hung up to dry, because there's an opportunistic mold which will take over the plants if they're not perfectly dry before they're wrapped up and shipped to the U.S.
What does that mold do? Does it?
It screws up the findings. You can't rely on them then.
Okay.
So we have to make sure they're dry, and that means renting a barn in whatever foreign country we're in. And all of these plant samples, which are labeled, you can see the little labels attached to the tops of the piles.
Yep.
A plant sample is 10 to 15 stalks cut off at the base where it comes out of the ground. And we take anywhere between hundreds and to thousands of these plants, depending on the size of the formation, depending on how much money we've got.
Right.
a number of factors here, but there's a basic sampling protocol that all of the field workers around the world had and were asked to follow exactly. So again, we were not having people pick plants that they thought were interesting. We had them picking sample plants every 3 feet or 5 feet or 10 feet or whatever, depending on the size of the formation, and in straight lines, diagonals going across these events, simply taking them, wrapping up a newspaper, labeling them with the label, and then off they would go to the barn to be dried down.
Fascinating. Absolutely
Once
fascinating.
they had taken the samples from inside, they then had to go and take at least half as many, sometimes 2/3 as many, controls. These are plants taken outside the formation in straight lines, heading away from the formation in multiple distances, east, south, north, west, whatever. And again, every 2 feet or 3 feet or 5 feet, whatever the protocol was.
Right, right.
And so we then, when those plants finally get to the lab in Michigan, Levengood's job then was to start measuring, literally measuring the top node. It's called the apical node. And if you go over to the right-hand side of your images under science, that first line on the right, what you've got there are 5 sample plants on the left from a formation in Canada. And on the right are 5 control plants. We've cut them so that we can line them up nicely so you can see them. But those are the same 5 plants on the left from the formation and 5 controls from some distance outside to show you the difference in the sample plants as opposed to the controls.
Okay, so explain a little bit exactly what I'm looking at. I've got the picture up, and I'm sure that everybody's looking at the same thing. It's for everybody. It's the fifth picture on the right in the top row, showing
white background
with the white background. Now, so see formation nodes, same plan. Okay, all right. So what has happened?
The first node that you're seeing there is the top node, the first node beneath the seed head.
Right.
It's normally about 1.5 feet below the seed head. Those are the nodes where we expect to see elongation, stretching.
And what kind of plants is this? Wheat? Is this grass?
This is barley, this particular one.
This is barley, okay.
The second node and third nodes and fourth nodes are where we expect to see, if they're present, expulsion cavities. And you can clearly see in this example that we have massive node elongation in the top nodes, and we have expulsion cavities in both the second and third nodes. Now, if you go down to the other image on the second line that has a white background, that is, the whole picture isn't showing, but you can see a control on the left, and you see a sample on the right. And that is the apical node, showing you the difference in the node length.
Now, I've got to I might be jumping in ahead a little bit here, but what, and I know we're going to talk about this a lot, but what is causing this?
Let me tell you 2 more things, and then I'll tell you.
Okay. The suspense is killing me. Okay, go ahead.
Go to the picture on the second row, second one in.
Second row, second one in. Got it?
Expulsion cavity. Big time.
Right.
That happens to be in corn, maize. They look the same, but smaller, of course, in wheat or oats or barley. These are holes blown out, usually at the second node or the third or the fourth or all 3, depending on how intense the energy exposure was. And that's the second visible sign. There are many other ways that we can tell, but in the field, there are only 2 visible signs. The first one is that apical node elongation or stretching.
Right.
The second one is the presence of expulsion cavities. You see either one or both of those with your eyes in the circle, and you can see them.
Sure.
Then you can be relatively sure that you're looking at the real McCoy.
And you're using a key word there. You keep saying expulsion. So what is being?
I'm getting there. I got one more thing I got to tell you.
Okay, go ahead.
Go all the way to the picture on the left on the second line.
Okay.
You're going to see a normal control seed head on the left. and a shrunken and shriveled seed head on the right.
And it's obvious.
Yeah, that's really obvious. Now, this is something, these samples were taken a month after the formation occurred. And what you're seeing there is a normal development of the seed head in the control, but the sample seed head has not grown at all. All three of these changes, the top node elongation, the expulsion cavities, and the seed heads, the seeds not developing, which is what's going on there, are caused, as best we can tell, by extremely brief, and I'm talking nanosecond, bursts of very intense heat. And the only heat that we know in science that's capable of doing this is microwave radiation. So we're talking about extremely brief, very intense bursts of microwave radiation. It's so brief, it does not burn the plants. What it does is it heats up the moisture inside the plant stem, because that's how all the nutrients get to the seed head. You know, there's moisture inside these stems.
Of course.
And what happens is it immediately turns to steam. Well, what happens? Steam expands, doesn't it?
Kind of like popcorn in a microwave, not to be...
Well, you're jumping the gun a little bit. Yes.
Okay.
For the expulsion cavities. But the top nodes of the plants, the apical nodes, that's where the youngest and most elastic tissues are. Those top nodes stretch. The tissues are so elastic that when the steam expands, it expands the node and seeps out slowly through the expanded tissue.
Got it.
Farther down the plant stem, the fibers are very tough. That's how the plant stands up, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
Those nodes do not expand. So when the pressure builds up, it blows a hole out. And in the third situation, what you've seen there is this effect that we find in almost every crop circle that occurs in immature plants, plants early in the growing season, before the seed is fully formed. Those microwaves interfere with and generally stop almost completely the development of those seeds, essentially sterilizing the plants.
Now, when it's man-made and you've got your hoaxsters in there with their boards and goofing around, this expulsion area and this damage is not present, correct?
Correct.
Ever?
If the hoaxers break the plant stem so that it dies,
right,
then, of course, the seed head will stop developing.
Right.
But the apical node elongation and the expulsion cavities will not be present.
Of course.
Expulsion cavities, once in a blue moon, you will see them, particularly, this is interesting, particularly in the tram lines, these tractor lines that go through the fields.
Right.
Because these energies, microwaves, like to follow along what they call waveguides. And the tractor lines actually function as waveguides in the field. And so the microwaves sometimes, not always, it depends on the length of time they're there and the intensity of them. Sometimes they'll travel right along the tractor lines, up and down away from the crop formation. And sometimes you will see expulsion cavities along those tractor lines. But it's caused by the same thing, the microwaves following what is a waveguide for them up and down the field.
Now, now I'm picturing this in my mind, and I'm starting to understand this a little bit. And thank you for explaining it like that, because I've got a tiny brain, and you're doing really well. So in this little nanosecond of microwaved, bursted, radioactive energy, it just happens.
Radioactive. It's well, actually, okay, on one level it is, but microwaves disperse immediately. There's no remnant radioactivity at all.
Do you think that, and this is where I was going with my question, this burst happens, do these plants just like fall straight down? I mean, just like,
no,
whack?
You gotta let me go on. There's more involved.
Okay.
Crop circles are not caused just by exposure to microwave radiation. That's only one of the energies involved. You didn't put these other pictures up, so I'm just going to have to wing it here. Well, actually, okay, I can use one. On the bottom list of pictures there, you'll see a few green plants up against a yellow background.
Yeah, picture number 4 in the second row.
Right.
Okay.
The plants on the left are the sample plants. The one all the way on the right, which you're not showing, are the controls. They're even shorter than what you're looking there is plants from 2 different areas of one circle, and then the controls, which are much shorter. Now, this is what happens when crop circles occur in mature plants. This is late in the season, when the plants are beginning to, when they're mature, the seeds are fully formed, and the plants are beginning to dry down. When the circles happen then, even though the seeds will be dehydrated and they weigh less and they look awful, they look like the endosperm is all wrinkled, they look like they're not going to do anything, what we have consistently found, and this is one of the most stunning of the things we have found, those seeds, when planted, will germinate at up to 5 times the rate of normal.
Really?
They grow much faster than the controls. They produce greater yield, and they do it without water or sunlight for long periods of time.
Huh. And how?
Now, that particular result we were able to replicate in the lab. Levingood and Burke developed a machine that delivers what they call ion avalanches. What this really is just imagine electrical pulses delivered to perfectly normal seeds. When you get the right balance, what happens is exactly this same thing. You can take normal seeds, run them through this machine, which they call the MIR machine. All of this information is on our plant abnormalities page on the BLT website, so people can see it in much greater detail. But the fact is that these electrical pulses, they're very unusual electrical pulses. When you find exactly the right pulse and just how long you have to do it for the different kinds of plants, you can cause this exact same change. And so from that, we know that another energy, in addition to the microwave radiation, there are also unusual electrical pulses as part of this energy system.
I'm having a real aha moment.
Yeah, goody.
Okay.
Now we've got one more energy that we've been able to, I'm not saying this is all, but it's all we've been able to do so far. We were able to demonstrate conclusively that another energy is also involved. And for this, you need to go to the last picture on the bottom row, the one of those tiny little spheres. Those are pure iron. They're in the range of, that's a photomicrograph, so those are about 30 or 40 microns in diameter. They're invisible to the naked eye, in other words. And they're magnetized. Now, what this means is that, there are meteors and things coming into the Earth's atmosphere all the time. So you have meteoritic debris filtering down. It's dust, really, right, filtering down through the Earth's atmosphere all the time. If, in fact, that dust encounters a plasma system, plasmas are known to have very strong magnetic fields when they spiral. They're also known to emit very unusual electrical pulses and microwave radiation. What happens is this dust is drawn, if it happens to be happening when a crop circle is also happening, the spiraling plasma pulls this dust into it, heats it up with the microwaves, it becomes molten, and just like during the Revolutionary War, when we had to make shot, remember we had to have shot towers and we would melt the lead on top of the shot tower and then drop it over the edge?
Right.
That's how we made cannonballs?
Right.
Same principle here. You've got now these molten clumps falling through the atmosphere toward the Earth, and they naturally form spheres. They're just tiny. And these spheres are found in the crop circle soils. And remember, they're not visible to the naked eye. The soil samples are taken, and then we have to filter them all out and look at it all under the microscope. But we find them in the circles, sometimes clustered around the centers of circular components, sometimes, more frequently, clustered all around the edges of the circular components, as if flung there by a rotating system of some kind. And fascinatingly, and this is why I wanted you to put in a couple of diagrams, in the crop circle, it's the second one on the top, next to Dr. Reynolds' picture. There's a crop circle there in Canada.
Right.
Yellow?
Yep.
Okay, in that circle that we did sample the ringed circle, the one that's cut off by the road.
Yep.
And we found these particles, as we usually do now, but not only did we find them, in this case, they were deposited linearly, meaning that the smallest amount was deposited dead center of that big circle, and then what is to be expected mathematically by this Beer-Lambert principle, the next amount was at the next sampling location, and it kept increasing and increasing and increasing, exactly as it would be if the Beer-Lambert principle was involved.
Wow.
And it produced this beautiful array, the deposition of these particles. The Beer-Lambert principle is used in physics all the time because it is a mathematical description of what you can expect, the changes that you can expect in matter when it is exposed to electromagnetic energies.
And it expanded from the exact center.
Correct. In this case, not every case does it do that, but this case was a classic case, which absolutely rules out, again, mechanical flattening, because these things are invisible, these little teeny spheres.
Right.
And how are you going to scatter along multiple radii? We didn't sample just one.
Right, of course.
Many.
Right.
And yet along each one of them, these increasing amounts were precise at the 99 point something, I think it was 0.7 level of confidence.
Was there a pattern to this? Were you able to demonstrate a pattern?
Yeah, and that was what the graph was for, to show people.
Oh, stop! but what was
this on the magnetic? It's in the magnetic material in the soils,
right?
And you will see both the pattern that we found inside the circle, and then you will see the erratic pattern that occurred immediately outside.
Did the pattern create another visual pattern?
Well, if you think straight lines, I mean, it created multiple straight lines of increasing amounts of these particles as you reach the external edge.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
Yes, it is.
When
I'd like to see any hoaxer do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, that's exactly my question. Is the magnetic soil material, is it ever found in a man-made circle? Well, yes. I'm sure it is, but what's the difference between the two?
Well, in further additional work, since all this was done, a guy, Nick Ryder, who was one of our guys, unfortunately, he died recently too. He found that coal-fired power plants, which are all over the Earth's surface now, these are just power plants run by coal, right?
Right.
The big smokestacks on the top of them produce what is called an effluvia. It just means debris, leftover stuff. And among that leftover stuff are tiny little spheres of various materials, not necessarily the pure iron spheres that we find in the crop circles, but other effluvia that is magnetized and is spherical. It happens to be larger, considerably larger than what we find in the crop circles. But it's all over the Earth's surface now because there have been so many coal-fired plants operating for so long that the winds have pretty much dispersed this stuff everywhere. So it becomes more and more important to look at the distribution of the stuff
than
it does to find the actual stuff. It is still significant in some cases, the stuff itself,
Right.
But it's that distribution which is an ironclad argument against the pranks with planks.
The pranks with planks. Okay, who's the gentleman in the top left the picture?
That is the man who, Dr. Robert C. Reynolds Jr., head of the Department of Earth Sciences at Dartmouth College, and then he was emeritus when he retired. But he is the man who evaluated our X-ray diffraction, the clay mineral study, which is the most comprehensive study that's been done to date. Rockefeller gave me the money to do that study, and Dr. Reynolds was the world's authority on clay mineralogy and the XRD technique. And when we had finished our study, I'd employed a number of other scientists to do the work. When we got the results, I couldn't believe them. And I knew that I needed an authority. And I was lucky enough to, because Dartmouth, I'm in Cambridge, and Dartmouth is not very far away. And I called him, and to my amazement, he agreed to let me come. And then when he saw our work, he couldn't believe it. He said, "Oh, no, this can't be." And he redid the X-ray diffraction work on the Dartmouth machine, got the same results we got. Then he redid the statistics because I had hired a separate statistician and got the same thing that man had gotten. And then did a little bit more work on his own to see if he could rule out any other causation. And when he was finished, he finally said that there was, in his opinion, that this had never been seen before in surface soil. These changes in the clays occur only in sedimentary rock, which has literally thousands of pounds of mountain pressing down on the rock over hundreds or thousands of years. And that's the only known way that this change in the crystalline structure occurs. And yet here we had it in surface soil in this crop circle. He said that the only other way it could possibly occur, in his opinion, was if that field had been exposed to temperatures in the range of 600 to 800 degrees Celsius for a matter of hours. Well, obviously, if the field had been exposed to those temperatures, it would have burned the plants to nothingness.
That's right. It would have been a black field.
And if the field had been exposed to what they call geologic pressure, mountains, pressing down, it would have been smushed to death. And since neither of those factors were in evidence, and all the indication, all the XRD work and statistical work, showed us that we did have the change, he said, and this is exactly what he said to me, we must be dealing with an energy unknown to science.
How did he, I understand what he said, but how did he react? Was he just, because he's a scientist, or was he believing what he was saying himself, if you know what I mean?
I wouldn't have said it otherwise. He was an incredibly elegant man, brilliant, and literally the toast of his peers.
Right.
He was head of the Mineralogical Society of America. He was everything you could be in the XRD and clay mineral fields, and he was very cautious at first. Very cautious.
Well, he would have had to have been. And how did his peers react to him?
They didn't like him doing this at all.
Of course not.
They advised him not to, but he ignored it because he was brilliant, and he's the kind of scientist that when presented with what's right in front of his face, a fact is a fact, whether you understand it or not.
Right.
And he was the kind of scientist who would deal with that. It was an incredibly lucky stroke for me.
And what did you do with this information?
I published it. It's all on the XRD. He and I actually, he was so astonished. He wanted to write a paper for Nature, the premier scientific journal. And he and I began to write that paper, but his wife suddenly became inexplicably ill very quickly and died. He was very close to her, apparently. He then became ill, and I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't want to bother him for a while. But before we could get together to completely finish the paper, he died. And I could not possibly get a paper published in Nature myself.
Right.
Without him. And with him gone, the only thing I could do was publish it on the BLT website, and I have. All the data, every single bit of the work is there.
So, okay, we're up against, let's take our first break. And then when we come back, we have so much to talk about. And I want to tell everybody really quick, probably, I don't know, it was about 3 weeks ago. Nancy and I were talking one night on the phone, and we talked for, I don't know, probably close to 2 hours, hour and a half. And I kept telling Nancy, save this for this show, Nancy. Save this. We just had the most brilliant conversation, and I'm just looking forward to us talking some more, and I just want everybody to stay with us. But, Nancy, bear with me for 1 second. I do have to make an announcement that I neglected at the beginning of the show. We're running a little contest here at the studio, and last night we're going to have 3 winners. Last night we had our first. And what it is this. We have Easter eggs posted all over jimmychurchradio.com. And each Easter egg has got something tied to it. I'm not going to say what it is. You got to figure that out. But we had our first winner last night. He got all of the Easter eggs. Of course, I'm not going to say how many. He got everything that was tied to it. And he did a brilliant job. And we had, I don't know, we had a lot of responses last night, and nobody was right except for David Curry in Springfield, Illinois. He was our first winner. We will be doing 2 more. The contest will run through tomorrow night. The winner, I've got some really cool DVD, UFO lecture DVDs that are very special, and he got his last night, and we contacted him today, so congratulations, Dave, and we will have 2 more winners. So with that, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes more with Nancy Talbot.
Thank you.
You got it. And we will be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. That was the wrong music. Let's go. Here we go. All right, everybody. We'll be right back. Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church. Shoot me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. I will read some when we come back. I'll be back right after this with Nancy Talbot. One 800-916-6232. That's the number you need to call when you are seeking spiritual enlightenment and searching for your true purpose here on earth. www.lovespellstoday.com. They provide psychic readings, love spells, reversal of spells, custom spells, chakra balancing, energy work. Divine guidance is just one phone call away. Call 1-800-916-6232 for your free psychic reading. I did. And tell them Jimmy sent you.
Hello, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
My name is Nick Dominguez. Hi, I'm Rex Dominguez, and I listen to jimmychurchradio.com. Jimmy, your preacher.
Amen. This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
KJCR.
JimmyChurchRadio.com. Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will. On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. How is everybody doing? This is a show. This is what I like to do. Like to learn something, and I'm learning right now. You still with us, Nancy?
I am.
Okay. Now, I just got some great news from our show producers here in the studio. This is for everybody out there. Just listen to me really quick. It's not that complicated. But our producers were listening to Nancy here at the studio. And so what they did in real time, if you refresh jimmychurchradio.com, just go and just refresh the homepage. Just refresh the page. Under the home button up on the top, you click on that. There's now a subpage that says Nancy Talbot. Not Nancy Talbot. Nancy Talbot. So just click on that, and all of the pictures that you sent us earlier today, Nancy, are there. And but I don't want to complicate the situation, but everything is there, and we'll get to that in a second. But it is there, so everybody can go and check out the stuff as we need it. But the reason why...
Tell me what I have to do, because I don't...
Okay, Nancy.
I'm not so good with computers.
All right, Nancy, just up on the top, the home button, right at the top of the page. Scroll over that, and then you will see your name pop up. Nancy, you see it right there.
No, I don't see nothing.
Okay, well, you will if you have to refresh the page.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so very good. So all those pictures are there. We'll get back to that. Want to keep moving forward here. While you goof around with that, Nancy, and see what's there. Nancy and I got in touch 3 weeks ago when NVIDIA, the microchip company that basically does video cards. I have an NVIDIA card in probably every computer here in the studio. So they, for the big CES convention that was going on in Las Vegas, they decided to pull a publicity stunt and did this crop circle up in Northern California. Now, the crop circle turned out to be man-made, and that in itself isn't the news. It's why Nancy and I talked. It's because, and Nancy, I'm going to let you run with this, but if everybody goes on the homepage, and you can click right there, and Chihuahua, California, that's the NVIDIA crop circle. And there's a bunch of information there that Nancy sent us today. Now, Nancy, so what I want you to do is tell us the story, just like you told me on the phone that night, about how you found out before. You know what? I'll let you just tell the story. I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag, because so just go ahead and you run with it.
Before I do that, Jimmy, we need to finish one little thing about the science.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
It's about they can understand the design thing and the plasma thing.
You know what's funny? I feel like my school teacher just whacked me across my knuckles with a ruler. Okay.
They're gonna have questions if we don't do it.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead.
Okay, briefly. What we know from the BLT work is the presence of microwave radiation, unusual electrical pulses, and strong magnetic fields as at least part of, whatever it is that's making the crop circles. Those three energies are known in science to be associated with plasma discharges. A plasma discharge you are all familiar with is a very high energy one, is a lightning strike, right?
Right.
A much lower energy plasma discharge that everybody knows about are the northern lights. But plasmas, when they spiral, absolutely give off these unusual electrical pulses, these strong magnetic fields, and the microwave radiation. And Levengood, the biophysicist who did all of this early plant work, it was his theory, and this is how we got the 3 papers published in the peer-reviewed literature. He proposed that a plasma discharge of some as yet unknown kind. Science is always finding new examples. Red sprites have recently been found. Blue jets have recently been found. They're plasma discharges. Levengood proposed that perhaps there was some kind of as yet unidentified plasma discharge that was creating the crop circles. And it was a very reasonable hypothesis because, based on his work, all of his basic findings fit that particular hypothesis very well, particularly since nature produces completely spontaneously all sorts of very intricate designs. Think of the seed head of a sunflower, for instance.
Sure.
I mean, I'm talking about design, right?
Geometric
And there
as can
have
be.
been crop circles that looked exactly like that.
Right.
You think of a nautilus shell.
Right. That's what
Yeah.
comes to mind first. Sure.
Exactly. Or snowflakes or whatever.
Right.
The point is that nature can produce all kinds of very intricate design, and it does all the time. We don't notice it because we're used to it. Okay. One more fact then. So, basically on the record is this idea of a plasma discharge being responsible for the circle phenomenon. But that only takes into account Levingood's work, the earlier work. When the clay mineral study was done, we tested a lot of the control plants and control soils to see if microwave radiation exposure alone could cause the changes in the clays, and it didn't. So it appears, I think Levingood's hypothesis is a very good starting point. He was accurate in talking about the energies, the effects of the energies that he discovered. That doesn't mean it's the final answer. And I just want people to realize that in science, you build on a foundation, you add as new discoveries, add to your knowledge base. So I hope that makes that part clear.
Okay. Well, my question, when you explain it like that, is the plasma strong enough to create the burst? To create the steam?
Oh yes.
Okay.
I mean, there is something, he always called it angular momentum because he didn't know what the hell else to call it. But obviously, the energies that we've identified are only part of what is going on. There has to be something which is actually flattening the plants.
Mm-hmm,
When you soften them with the microwaves turning the inside, to moisture to steam, that softens the plant stem and would allow it to kind of flop over. But it doesn't swirl it into the patterns.
Right.
Something else that we don't know what that is yet.
Right.
Nobody's been able to identify that yet. And Lord knows there may be other energies involved that we didn't see.
Right. And there's one thing that I have noticed, and then we'll get back to our conversation, but there's one thing I've noticed over the years where there are certain, when you can tell, at least to my eyes, when you have a non-man-made crop circle, and certainly in the center, in the very center, you see the plants are swirled and woven into each other like it's been in some kind of vortex or some kind of, and there's no way that if I was there watching somebody, they would have to sit there and weave this thing for about a month and a half to get this pattern to happen.
There's another point that is not mentioned because the pictures weren't up there, but the fact of the matter is that there are randomly downed areas of plants, often in association with a geometric design. And sometimes these randomly downed areas will cross over the geometric design or be close to it,
right,
or be in the same field.
Exactly.
We know from having tested many of those that the same changes are found in those plants, even though there's no design. They're just randomly downed. And so even though randomly downed crop can be caused by weather, or over-fertilization. If the seed head becomes too developed because they put too much nitrogen on,
right,
it makes the plant too heavy and it could flop over. There are reasons why randomly down crop occur that have nothing to do with the crop circle phenomenon. But we know that the real phenomenon does also create randomly downed areas. And if you go to our field report section on the BLT website, you'll see some beautiful examples of that and other stuff from a whole series of tests we did in 2009 in England. There's one other thing that might help people. On our published papers page, The scientific papers are probably too heavy for a lot of people to read, but underneath them we have books and articles. And in particular, there is a short piece called The Physics of Crop Formations, written by John Burke. And it's written in everyday layman's language. And people who are more interested in understanding Levengood's hypothesis could read that, and I'm sure they'll be able to understand it.
You think I would understand it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then there you go. I think we'll be all right. And I was reading, I got through. Your website isn't for, it just isn't for, it's not a sensational, it's not TMZ. It's not for entertainment. This is a purely scientific point of view. And that's where the set of eyes comes from, and I love it. I try to understand all of it, but it is very straightforward. I always say black and white, but that's exactly what it is. There isn't anything left open, and I really respect
don't speculate, and we present whatever facts we've got as clearly as I can write them. And I'm open to, if people don't understand something, write me, call me, and I'll clarify it as best I can.
Now,
that's all you can do.
Let's jump into this NVIDIA thing, because it is first off, for everybody out there, this report came out. This news story broke a few weeks ago. This crop circle here in California, and it is that we know now. Well, we knew almost immediately that it was publicity stunt for NVIDIA. I think they even made a commercial out of it, but of a chip. It's just of a NVIDIA chip of something that they were either introducing or whatever. But that's what it turned out to be.
Brand new, that's really hot stuff, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. And so you and I have our conversation, and I didn't know when you and I first started talking, and that's why I want you to tell the story. I want you to hit everybody the way you hit me with it. I didn't know what you and I were going to talk about. I knew it was going to be about the crop circle, and I knew that, but then you nearly made me crash my car that night, and we ended up staying on the phone for quite a long time. So I'm going to let you just tell everybody this. Extraordinary is the only word that I can think of. The story of how you found out. No, wait a minute. You just tell the story. Tell the story of the NVIDIA chip.
For people who want to follow it on the website, it's the very first item on the homepage for bltresearch.com. The first thing with a new button. That's this story that I'm going to be telling. Okay, Monday, December 30th. I get a telephone call, I don't know, around maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon from California, from a reporter. I think it was the Denver. I'm not the Denver. It was, I can't remember the name of the paper. Herald. And he's telling me that a crop circle has just been found in the Salinas Valley. And it just kills me. The first thing he says is he wants me to tell him from a picture, is it real?
Like I did.
I'm thinking, oh my God, oh dear Lord. So I tell the man, look, I'm really sorry, but the only way that I know to absolutely for real tell you whether a formation is genuine or not is if we sample it and do all the work, and then I could tell you. He didn't like that. That was boring. He wanted something more sensational, and I just can't do it. I asked him if he would send me a picture, and he did. And my first take, it looked fake to me. But I don't, and I told him that it looked man-made to me, but that I could not possibly say that it was without some actual work being done. Then he talked for a few minutes, but he didn't. The science, they think the public is too stupid, you see. And I know the public isn't. If you explain it carefully and thoughtfully, it's not rocket science. You can explain it, but he wasn't willing to even make the effort. So he eventually hung up, and it just happened that a young Dutch medium, Robert Vandenbroek, whom I've worked with since he was 17, he's now 34, Oh, and I'll tell you how I got to know him eventually. But he Skyped me, which was very rare. Normally we're on Skype at night, but it was in the middle of the day. And this was before there was anything written anywhere on the internet or newspapers or anywhere about this circle. And all I had was the information from this guy that it was in the Salinas Valley. It had been made or had been found Monday morning. And I had one aerial. That was it. So just for the heck of it, because Robert can tell by looking at a picture, he's the only other way I know to tell for sure. And I can't prove that scientifically. I just know he can because he does it all the time.
Right.
But I thought to myself, what the heck? I'm going to show this to him and see what he says. Because my impression was, oh dear, that is mechanically flattened. That is not a genuine circle.
Right.
But I didn't say that to him. I just sent him the picture, and I didn't even tell him where. I said it's in California. Robert does not travel. He has no formal education. He doesn't even know where California is. He knows it's a U.S. state, but that's all he knows. And it doesn't matter to him where things are. And I just sent him the picture, and I said, would you tell me what you think? And it came, went over, and boom, right away he says, oh, that's man-made. And then he starts talking. And I grab my pen and I start to write, because he does this sometimes, not all the time. First thing he says to me, the very first thing he said is, and he couldn't pronounce it because he doesn't read or write English. So then he Skyped it to me. He typed it into his Skype thing. And what he typed was Crissetti's custom land work. He didn't know what it said. There were no spaces. There was no apostrophe. And he asked me to read it to him. So I read it back, and I said, I think it's the last name of somebody named Crissetti, and it's a company that does something called custom land work, which I didn't know what that was, but that's what it sounded like. And so he then is starting to go on with other information. He's telling me about a tractor driver. He's telling me about that the tractor driver is watching the guys making this circle on Saturday, not Monday, Saturday.
And this was all in the same conversation.
Yeah. This is Monday, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
okay.
Eastern time.
Okay.
And so as he's talking, I'm Googling like crazy, trying to see if I can find this Crissetti thing. I type Crissetti 'S, custom land work, plus California, because I'm figuring if he's getting a hit, and this is a company, it's probably going to be somewhere in California. And immediately, bingo, right away, up comes Crissetti Custom Land Work.
Wow.
And I told him, I said, guess what, Robert? There's a place, and it's a real place. And both of us then got goosebumps, like, oh my goodness, he's going to do it again.
Right.
And I'm thinking, all right, I better write. So I'm writing now as he's telling me. He sees the tractor. He sees this man in the tractor. And the man is connected somehow to Crissetti Custom Land Work. He doesn't know how, but he knows they're connected. The man is not making the circle. He is watching the people who are making the circle.
Oh, so the guy in the tractor, just so I'm clear, has nothing to do. He is just an observer.
He's just working in a field across the street.
Right. Okay. I got you.
He doesn't know anything about anything. Turns out, I'll tell you in a minute how I found out more about that. Then Robert goes on and starts to describe one of the individuals because he can see him in his head. And he starts trying to describe to me this guy's face. And he's telling me about what I think we would call mutton chops, lots and lots of big, fuzzy sideburns.
Gotcha.
And he's telling me that the guy and he gives me exactly his build, his age. I've got to see if I can find its way down here. He says, he describes him as, I have to find the right place.
It's okay, Nancy. It's okay. Just continue.
Okay. He says, he saw this guy standing near or in the circle, holding a plank of wood and grinning from ear to ear, looking very pleased with himself. He was broad-shouldered, but not too tall. And in the summer years of his life, Robert's English is a little different from how we would speak. He says that the guy lived in the general area and usually wears a white T-shirt and cut-off jeans and a small cap of some kind. It was some sort of hat thing that he wasn't really familiar with. And he said he saw some reddish color in it. He also saw that the man was wearing large plastic wraparound sunglasses, that he had short grayish black hair, and then all this bushy stuff around the side of his face. He said that the man sometimes had a full beard, but sometimes he shaved. But he thought maybe this time he didn't have the stuff on the lower face. He couldn't see his chin or his neck, so he wasn't sure whether the guy had a full beard or not. And then he described this wide smile. The man's mouth apparently is quite wide. And when he smiles or grins, his teeth don't show, which is kind of weird, you know?
Right.
The lips don't part. And then he said, as he so often does in these things, he got the letter R. He usually gets whole names, but all he could get this time to begin with was R. And then he saw another weird detail, an orange-colored kite of the kind that children like to fly.
For everybody,
and then it starts going on with a bunch of other details about another guy.
Okay, Nancy, I just want to jump in really quick, just really fast. The sketch that Nancy's referring to is in the gallery. So if you just go down to the gallery and you can see there is a sketch there in the Chihuahua, California gallery. It's in the second row. Looks like a bank robber with sunglasses. But
yeah, it does.
It does. So while Nancy's describing everything, this is it. There's the mutton chops, and she says at the bottom of the page, this is Robert's sketch of the man he saw making the crop circle on December 28th. So you've got to look at this picture. It is crazy. So all
right. So then Robert goes on, and he sees another guy. And this man was not too tall, smooth-shaven, and in his 40s or 50s, wearing a dark jacket with blue along the shoulders and upper back, and dark blue jeans and black shoes. The kind of coat he's describing is like a Western cut, where they put different colors on the shoulders and the back.
Right.
And this guy was also involved in making the circle. There were several people. He saw lots of people in the field. He saw also several younger guys, one of whom had a connection to Poland. But it was these other two, particularly the guy that he drew the picture of. And I had him do that because I wasn't quite sure what he was telling me,
Right.
I wanted to see. And then he said, I'm not sure why they're doing it, the circle, but he felt that there was a practical reason. They weren't doing it necessarily to jerk around crop circle enthusiasts.
Right.
There was a practical reason. Okay. About then, I've written all this down. He's run out of gas at the moment. And we end the Skype conversation. And I decided I better very quickly write this all up. So I wrote up a preliminary report with everything he told me, including his sketch and, an aerial shot of the circle and all that stuff. And I managed to send one copy of that out. I had a whole list of people I was going to, and my computer died.
I remember that. We were talking. Remember, we were talking on the phone, and
yes.
we couldn't exchange emails because your computer went down.
Yeah. So, because of that, Robert could not get back to me. Apparently, within the hour after ending the Skype thing, he got the names Rob and John. And I know that this is true because he told Stan, who is his best friend and somebody I know very well, who was right there with him during this. He told Stan because he couldn't tell me. And he also got the words cannot say. He had no idea what they meant or why it was important, but he thought that it was. So I made notes here, but I couldn't write this all up for weeks because it took me a couple of weeks to get a new computer and get it set up. In the meantime, what I did was I got a phone number for Crissetti, and I called, and sure enough, a friend of mine had called and told me he had seen on one of the websites, which I hadn't because I didn't have a computer, that someone named Gloria Cressetti had made some comments about one of her workers being close to the circle. And this guy said he would send me the link as soon as I had a computer. And so as soon as I did have a computer, he did.
Right.
And I looked it up, and then I called the number and talked to Gloria herself. And what she said was, yes, she had one of their workers, and it turns out he was a Mexican man who did not speak a lot of English, was in fact working for them on one of their tractors in the field opposite. And he was watching, he saw the guys on Saturday making the crop circle. But he was not physically close enough to them to see their faces. And he couldn't really tell what they looked like, you know?
And he probably didn't know what the heck they were doing either.
Probably not.
Right.
Probably didn't have a faintest idea.
Now,
but in fact, it turns out that Cressetti Custom Land Work was involved, that one of their workers was on one of their tractors. It was in a field across from the barley field where the focuses were, and it was on Saturday. So all of that part of what Robert had told me was absolutely correct. It was spot on, which is how it always is with him, by the way.
Which is my question to you, Nancy. Seriously, you, if it would have been me in your situation, and this was Brent, I would be like, this is crazy. This is insane. But this happens to you all the time with Robert, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So no big
surprise. It happened so many times. It's not just this; it's so much else that. Once you know, I've known Robert now, we've been working together for it's 18, 19 years now. And I go over there and spend 2 or 3 weeks every year. I stay in his home with his family. I'm one of the family now. And I know where he is 24/7. When I'm there, I know exactly, he doesn't drive. He only has a bike. I know exactly where he is. And I know, whether he could possibly have been out in the fields making the crop circles around him or not.
Right.
Because I'm right with him.
Now,
and he isn't.
Now, to be clear, I want everybody to understand, and then I've got another coup d'etat moment for Nancy on this story. But I want everybody to understand that before it was announced that NVIDIA was the culprit and this was a publicity stunt and it was man-made, Nancy knew it was about 2 days before, actually, Nancy, because
it was that night, Monday night. I knew by then.
No, I'm saying it was 2 days before NVIDIA made the announcement.
It was like 5 days.
Yeah,
before.
Because you and I talked on the phone, and we were still trying to figure it out. You had told me about your evidence, but you didn't want to go public with me until you had your bases covered. And
right.
So that's the finishing part of the story. This is your coup d'etat moment. So now you have to document, timestamp everything, and you need your proof, of course, not for yourself, but for the world. How did you go about that, and what happened next?
Well, as I say, I did call Gloria, and she confirmed all that early stuff. Then I set about trying to find anybody who had witnessed close up, because it turns out there are multiple people in California who, driving by the field, had seen men out in the field for days prior to the announcement of the circle, you see.
Exactly.
And I was hoping that I could find one of them who might be able to tell me that they had seen somebody who looks like this picture that Robert drew. And I have been unable to find anybody. I mean, I don't know all those people that stopped by. And maybe among your listeners, there will be someone who, in fact, did stop and did see and maybe can identify this guy. I don't know who it is, but I know that when Robert is as specific as he was in this case, I've never known him to be wrong. So my guess is there was a guy that looked something probably pretty close to like this who was involved. He was one of the people, not the only person, but one of the people making this crop circle. And I bet you the other guy with the blue, the jacket with the blue on it,
right,
and the young guy with the Polish connection, I'd bet you every cent I've got that he's absolutely right about that. But I can't prove that part because I wasn't there. and I have not been able to find anyone who, they had guards, keeping everybody out.
Right.
And so I don't know anybody who actually saw the crop circle makers who could tell me. What I do know, and this is again from George Wingfield, was that both Rob and John, these two names that Robert, he called me on the phone on the next morning to tell me that those names, the ones he couldn't Skype me about because my computer was down, he called and told me that stuff on Tuesday morning on the telephone. And both a Rob and a John, who are part apparently of one of these English circle making groups, were involved. So apparently those names were correct. And the cannot say, I then found subsequently, was part of that idiotic. There was a YouTube clip that people had put up, I guess these same people, two guys supposedly driving at night, Sunday night, along this road next to the field.
Right.
And they supposedly see green flashes off it looked like green laser lights to me, off in the corner of the field, and they stop their car and they get off and they hushed voices, they go over a barbed wire fence, and they sound like they're scared, and yet they go marching right into this field. And then there's some conversation about, dude, it's a crop circle. It was so theatrical that it didn't fool me, but it was part of this whole thing. And the guy who posted that video signed himself Cannot Say. So that's why Cannot Say kept coming to Robert.
With Robert, I don't know how I don't know how you deal with it, because you've got him in your back pocket, so to speak. He's on your team, and you've experienced.
I've known him for so long.
Yeah, you've known him for so long. This is just what you come to expect. But it is extraordinary, to say the least, his abilities and what he can do. And you know what? Let's take a break. I want to come back. Let's just take.
Tell them about the one other case that we've got listed on the site. He did exactly the same thing in 2011.
Yes. Well, hold on. We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
And I also want to talk about the 2012 Dutch Crop Circle season 2 as well. And that was my surprise, Nancy. See, I wanted to blindside you with something, but so that's it. I wanted to do the 2012 season 2 as well. So let's just with Robert. Before we take the break, how did you meet him originally 18 years ago?
His father is a banker and was head of Rabobank, which is the largest bank in the Netherlands. It is an upper middle class family, not interested in any foolishness. Robert was born like this and has been of considerable problem for the family to deal with for a long time. But when he was 17, I had heard about him from one of my field workers in the Netherlands, because he was one of the first people to report seeing light balls make a crop circle. And I didn't pay any attention to it back then, because I just thought, yeah, sure thing. Well, then the next year, a big light ball came. His parents' house is in a little subdivision, and there's a farm field right behind it. And Robert's room is at the back of the house, with floor-to-ceiling glass doors that open out onto a little teeny balcony overlooking this field. He and his sister were in the room one night listening to music, and suddenly this huge, and I mean big, it had to be 14, 16 feet in diameter, glowing ball of light appeared immediately in front of those windows over the balcony, rotating. Scared the dickens out of the kids. They went running downstairs, got the parents, came back up. The ball of light was gone, but there were burn marks on the eaves overhanging the balcony. There were burn marks on the outsides of the balcony doors, and there was a pile of white powder sitting on the balcony floor. The father wanted the white powder analyzed, and our field worker asked me if our scientists could do it. I agreed, and that's how we met.
And what was the white powder?
Well, that and many, many other instances of it proves And we've done everything: ICP-MS, isotopic ratios, the infrared spectroscopy, and even X-ray diffraction with a guy at the USGS. It is 99.99% pure hydromagnesite in a chemical formulation that humans use, not as pure as this, but in this chemical formulation. It's something we use in fire extinguishers.
Wow. It's, how does, before I just go, how did that show up there? We're going to get back to that in a second. I have a couple of quick emails, some questions that I want to get to really quick before this. We take this quick break. Very simple. This comes from Renee in Tucson, Arizona, and she says, please ask Nancy, how has the work of Colin Andrews affected your research or vice versa?
It really has nothing really to do with it, I'm afraid. I mean, we're doing science and we're just do it independently on our own.
Do you guys communicate, you and Colin?
No. Have
you communicated?
Not for many years.
Okay. All right, because this is kind of, it's almost the same. Well, just let me read it. This comes from Dave. It says, I have been fascinated by crop circles since the days when Colin Andrews and Michael Glickman were on Art Bell. I'm curious about the pi circle. Has it been found to be a hoax, and does Nancy know?
He's talking about the one at Avebury. I have to be a little bit more specific. I'm not sure which one he means.
Okay, it's pi spelled like the mathematics
I know
symbol.
what pi is, but there have been several circles with that symbol, so I have to know what year and where.
Okay, Dave, shoot us an email. We've got a little more time, and I know you're listening, so a little more specific for Nancy. And with that, Nancy, let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back, and I'm serious. I've been looking forward to the Robert Vandenbroek section of this show, and wait till everybody out there hears what Nancy has to say about this gentleman. Absolutely fascinating. We'll be back after this. Everybody stay with us. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Shoot us an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We are live with Nancy Talbot from Cambridge, Massachusetts. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We have with us Nancy Talbot from Cambridge, Massachusetts. BLT research. We're talking crop circles. Right now, we're going to talk about Robert Vandenbroek. And now, before we get into this, Nancy, by the way, shoot us an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com if you have any questions for Nancy. We'll certainly get those on the air. And also following Twitter at JChurchRadio. Okay, now, you were just telling us how you met Robert, but one of the things, everybody, just go to the homepage at JimmyChurchRadio.com. On the home tab at the top, scroll over the home tab. You'll get a new link that we had to put up. It's an emergency tonight. Nancy got her own page tonight. It says Nancy Talbot there, and you can click on that, and that's going to open up a whole set of second pictures. And most of these galleries involve Robert directly. So now, Nancy, we had said earlier.
One thing that would be wise, Jimmy, because Robert's case is so peculiar, the science work, I mean, we've done a lot of science with Robert, and if we went down to the bottom to the white powder thing there.
I saw it, yes.
Very briefly go through that to help show that there's a lot of science supporting this incredibly bizarre situation in Holland.
Well, and you had said, well, this okay, let me get my thought out really quick.
Okay.
You wanted to talk about 2011. I wanted to talk about 2012. So the reason why I pulled up these galleries first, if you want to run with 2011, we have that. But then I've got
real briefly that white stuff down at the bottom because it helps show that the evidence that we find in various situations, we're applying exactly the same approach to every bit of physical evidence that we get in Robert's case.
Because now you have a situation with Robert. You have all of your scientific. I'm speaking for you right now, but you have all of your scientific research and your team, your laboratory, and all of the work that is going on directly with the crop circles. But now you've got a situation here with Robert, where now you're getting into some fringe areas where I don't know how you separate your black and white mind to your open mind. That's what you've got to deal with Robert.
Because I'm a Pisces, my dear.
So that's how you deal with
can
it.
Do that.
Okay. All right. So now I'm looking at this is the white powder that was found on the back
down
patio.
At the bottom of one of these pages,
right.
And you see the tube of light for the crop circle I saw, and then there are two pictures, one of Robert and me not too long ago in the field. The next one is when I first met him. You can see how young he was.
Right.
And beneath that is the white powder. And the first picture in the second row is the white powder on his balcony, which is how I met him.
Right. Now,
the next picture is the same kind of white powder, but this time in a crop circle. And the picture next to that shows you just the amount of white powder recovered in 1 year from various circles around him. So you can see how much.
Where is the white powder coming from, Nancy?
How the hell do I know? You're asking stuff I don't know.
And it's pure. It's more pure than
almost 100. It's laboratory grade. It has to be laboratory grade. It's produced. It's manufactured somewhere, somehow. You can't go and buy this purity level. And that's what I wanted to point out with this last row of pictures. The rose, the burned rose, and the moth with the white powder. This is now an incident inside his home. And the burning that you see on that panel, that's burn marks on the window directly behind the burned rose. And again, this is where all this work was done. And it is the same stuff that we've been talking about all along. But the point is that Robert, if he wanted to, could not go. I went to a company, Alpha Azar, that produces chemical substances for sale. But you have to have a license to buy this stuff. I couldn't buy it. I had to get one of our scientists to buy the control sample. And then we ran the control against the powder on this moth and the rose and some of the others. And it's exactly the same stuff. 99.99% pure hydromagnesite.
Well,
so, Robert isn't making this up.
Well, did you do what I would have done, which is, did you kind of walk around his house and maybe look out of the corner of your eye as you're walking around and maybe try to see if he's got any stashed in the house? Did you know what I mean? Were you ever a little skeptical at first?
I've been there for almost 18 years. I know every inch of that house. His parents and I were all, I'm part of the family. Nothing is hidden. I know stuff that is much too personal to ever speak about.
Well, sure. But you understand what I'm saying. I love I love my brothers too, but I'm still suspicious if there's, something like this happens. I'm going to check out the house just to make sure I'm not crazy. So
by the time the white powders thing started, the way it started, the weird things it started was when I was on a tour, a lecture tour in Europe, and I had a talk in Amsterdam in 98. And the family came to thank me for the work that our scientists had done. And the father, he did something very unusual, and I did something very unusual. I had a couple nights before my next lecture, and he asked me if I would come to their house so they could tell me more, because there were so many things going on. The man was just dying. He had no idea what was going on. And I would never do this normally, but I agreed. His wife is a lovely person. Robert's mother is lovely. And so I went. And what happened to me that first night in their house, I mean, believe me, if it had happened to you, you would have had your mind open whether you wanted it open or not.
Okay.
I'm sitting there. I have this. It was actually the second night. The first night I was so darn tired I just went to sleep. Second night I was there. I had this feeling, this intuition, I guess you'd call it, of not going to bed. Don't go to bed. Now, I'm a night person, so I just assumed it was just that, just me being a night person. But I knew not to go to bed. The parents, who are very elegant and perfect hosts, would not go to bed either because I was still up, right? So the three of us are sitting down in this living room, and this is also at the back of the house, looking out with these big floor-to-ceiling glass doors onto a patio that is part of their little backyard before you get to the farm field. And it's got trees and grasses and flowers and whatever in it. And I had my back to the window. The parents were both facing the window. And suddenly the father jumped up and he said, there. And I hadn't seen it, but there'd been a flash of light in the garden. And he had just been telling me about these weird things that go on, the flashes of light being one of them.
Right.
So I said, okay, I didn't see anything. I turned my chair around. We turned off all the lights downstairs, and we just sat there quietly to see if anything else would happen. And what happened was perhaps at the time the most amazing thing I'd ever experienced. After a little while, dead silence, a tingling started in my body. And it was at my waist level, all around my body, front and back, and my arms. And it slowly was rising toward my neck. And it was becoming more intense as it rose. And it got into just below my chin. And I suddenly thought to myself, the hell with science, I'm getting out of here. It scared me.
Right.
And I started to get up out of the chair, literally to leave the room. And bam, the tingling stopped completely. And this light show then started in the garden like nothing I've ever seen in my life. It was like watching the 4th of July and then some. There were huge balls of light, little balls of light, flashes of light, blobs of light coming down and bouncing along the patio bricks all at once. I mean, it literally was like a 3-ring circus. I didn't know where to look first.
Okay, now you're rational. I want you to be rational with me because I'm trying to be rational right now. I'm trying to understand.
It helps.
Okay, yes. What was it that you were saying?
I don't know what it was. Let me finish telling you the story.
Well, your rational mind must have been trying to make sense out of it.
Of course it was, but you don't jump to a conclusion when you have I had no data at the time. I mean, the first time anything like this has ever happened to me. So the light show went on for, I'm guessing, 10 to 15 seconds. Nobody said a word. It stopped. Still, nobody said a word. And I'm thinking to myself, what in the heck? What in the hell was that? I have no idea.
Right.
For too long, I don't know, a minute or two, the tingling starts again. And it starts to rise up my body exactly as it had before. And it gets to my neck again, and it's getting pretty intense. And again, I say, okay, the hell with this. I'm getting out of here. And before I can get up, the tingling stops and the light show happens again. This repeated itself at least 5 times. I'm not sure. None of us are sure whether it was 5 or 6 or 7 times. The entire time period that elapsed was about 11 minutes. None of us spoke a word during it. The father was terrified. He was really scared. And by the time the fourth or fifth thing it was happening, I was realizing now it wasn't going to hurt me, apparently. So I'd gotten out of my chair and I was standing right against the window, this glass, looking up, trying to see what the heck this was all coming from.
Right.
I was I didn't have the guts to go outside. I thought about it and I just didn't have the guts. But I'm standing there as close as I can get to these doors, these glass doors, and I can't see anything up above. And this stuff is dropping down in blobs right in front of my eyes, literally inches away from the outside of the glass, and then bouncing along the brick pathway before it just disappears. The balls of light are popping in and popping out. The flashes are going. I mean, it was amazing. So finally, the last event of it happened, and I don't know why I said this. I turned around to the parents, and I announced, like I was God, that's it. It's over. I have no idea why I said that, but it was over. So I immediately separated the parents, because I'm going to do the good old mutual UFO thingy, you know.
Right.
I get one parent in the kitchen and I close the door, keep the other one in the living room.
Right.
Because I want to find out if they experienced the same thing I did.
That was my question. Yeah. Was everybody seeing the exact same thing? But you said something.
They experienced physically the same tingling.
Nancy.
So the entire experience was the same for all three of us.
But Nancy, I have to, before we get too far away from this, you said something earlier that kind of surprised me. You said that the father was terrified. So was this the first time that they experienced this as well? Was this the first time for everybody?
First time this had ever happened, this seriously. And they said after it, that was for you. That is because you are here. And I didn't believe it. I said, no, it was very location specific. It was contained within a very precise area, because I'd been looking at that while I was watching it.
Right.
I would say about 14 foot wide by perhaps 12 or 14 feet deep. Everything that was going on out there was going on within that space.
Right.
And so for me at the time, the way I would deal with that was it was location specific. It never occurred to me that it had happened because I was there.
Right.
That's what the parents said.
Was it like fireworks in a cube? Is that what, I'm trying to imagine. Is that what was going on?
Imagine great big diaphanous bluish translucent light balls just hanging.
Huh.
Imagine little dense white, very dense light balls popping in here and there. Flashes of light like flash bulbs going off everywhere. And then in the middle of all this, these blobs, irregularly shaped blobs of dense, opaque, brilliant white light coming screaming down and hitting the damn bricks and bouncing along before they would dissipate. I don't know how else to explain it. That's what I saw.
Huh. Okay. I want everybody, let's go to, do you want to do 2011 or do you want to do 2012 first?
Well, I think that you ought to think about the point I'm trying to make is that my introduction to Robert, that was my introduction.
Right. And so
from that, I started to experience firsthand, every time I was there, a huge array of mind-boggling events. It happened every time, all day long, every day, multiple incidents. He took thousands of photographs with my camera, with my chips, dated with my handwriting, because I'd put a new chip in every morning and date it in my handwriting.
Right.
He never touched my camera unless I handed it to him. After a certain amount of this, I would come home from these trips, and sometimes I would just sit here, literally just sit for weeks, trying to absorb what I'd seen on that last trip.
Well, because, and for me, I mean, Nancy, these experiences with Robert, it had a little bit of everything in it.
Yeah.
It was like an e-ticket at Disneyland in that, you had ghosts, apparitions, balls of light, UFOs,
activity.
Yeah, ETs. It just...
Oh, yeah, the ETs coming left and right.
Yeah. And all of it was photographed. And
on top of that, all of these people who are deceased. And in 2007, my own brother died. And I already had my ticket to go to Holland.
Right.
And Robert told me that he thought my brother was going to come on my camera. And I said, no, I don't want it. I'm not ready for that. But I went, and it didn't make any difference. The very first day, he took me into one of the fields where the crop circles were to show them to me in broad daylight. And we walked into the field, and 5 seconds later, he said, your brother's here. Can I have your camera? And I gave it to him, and he took 60 photos of Bill. He had never seen Bill and wouldn't have known him if he fell on him. And that was my brother, and he was there. I mean, his picture was there. His image was there.
Right,
there are
right.
60 images of Bill on my camera that Robert took when Bill was dead for 2 months.
That is, it's incredible. And now what I'd like everybody to do, let's go, just go to the home tab on jimmychurchradio.com. Go to the home tab, hover over that, and click on Nancy's name. It's right there in the upper left-hand corner. Simple enough. Hover on the home tab. Click on Nancy's name. Now, we have a bunch of galleries on this page that Robert and Nancy took these photographs together. Most of them, and I need everybody to understand, these were taken with Nancy's camera. Now,
and Dr. William Rolls and a number of other people.
Right, and video
mine.
teams, right. And we'll go through that, but some of these are just absolutely extraordinary. So what I want to jump to first, because I like the UFO stuff at the top, and normally I would go there, and I like the second gallery, but I want to go to this third gallery with Robert and these swirls of light, and just tell me what everybody is looking at. Let's start at the first photograph.
The light stuff.
Yeah, and it says,
this was what I first, after that first night.
is that you sitting there,
Yeah,
Nancy?
that's me in bed because I had a cold that year, and he was sitting in my room keeping me company.
Okay, can you see this ball of light in the room when the picture was taken?
Not with my eyes, no.
That is an
He sometimes can see it with his eyes.
Right.
Sometimes he doesn't. And I don't honestly know in that case whether he saw it or not. I didn't see it.
I've never seen anything like this, and I don't know how you could replicate or try to, as you say, get your control, or try to get another version of this photograph to compare. I don't know how you would do it, but what are the circumstances in this room? What made him take this picture?
He was just keeping me company, and he gets bored. So he was taking pictures.
And
he takes pictures. He has thousands and thousands and thousands of these. I have 3,000 or 4,000 right here on my camera, and his father has a steel cabinet that's 8 feet tall by, 8 feet tall by 6, 7, 8 feet wide, crammed with books, with thousands and thousands and thousands more. It's not a joke.
No, it's not. And so I'm looking at this picture, and I don't really know. My mind is, doesn't know what I'm looking at. I'm going to take a guess, and then I want your opinion. But it looks like maybe a soul, some type of ghost with light trails off. Is it a spirit? What do you think we're looking at?
I don't speculate that way.
Right.
I simply don't know what it is.
And what does Robert think that it is?
He didn't even, I don't remember him even remarking about that. The next picture over was taken with one of our German colleagues' cameras, a guy who's very sophisticated. Robert has to have the camera. He's not mechanical at all.
Right.
So the cameras have to be set in auto, and he does nothing to the camera except push the record button. He can't do anything else. And so this German guy, who had questions just like you do, came and brought all his fancy cameras. And the very first pictures Robert got with his cameras were ETs, which I thought was funny as hell. But this is another night when Andreas was staying with us. And that second one is one of the images from one of his cameras. The next one over with all the scriggly stuff all over it is I'm sitting 3 feet away from Robert, watching him as he aims the camera at his own face and takes that picture. We're sitting in his kitchen.
Right.
With my eyes, I see nothing between me and him except air.
Right.
That's the kind of picture that came.
It's insane. I have no idea how this could be
Well, I'm sure it could be fake, but not with me standing right there watching him.
Yeah, I mean,
and
even
it's my camera.
Yeah, even then, I have no idea. It looks like it was taken on the Las Vegas Strip. With that is but not only that, but you've got two distinct types of, or more like three or four, but two distinct images on this picture, but yet he is perfectly still. I have no idea how I don't know what I'm looking at. That's an amazing photograph.
You've got to suspend that kind of judgment at the moment and just start to absorb.
Right.
And eventually maybe you'll come to some idea. I don't know yet. The fourth picture over the circle, the
Yes.
simple round circle,
Right.
was one he took outside in his special field. The special field is where he first saw the light balls making a crop circle. And that was with his camera. Then you go down to the next row, and that's me in the orange shirt.
Right.
And he's just feeling the energy and taking a picture, and that's one of them.
And
the
again,
next one.
Well, hold on. Let's again. I don't want to just rub this in the ground, but you're in focus. The background's in focus. The picture's on the wall. There's nothing. The camera is perfectly still. And what the heck is going on here? What is it that we're looking at? That is bizarre.
He calls them the energies.
That is just bizarre. And it's one photograph. Now, this next one, it's one of my favorites.
Isn't that a neat shot of him?
Yeah. And again, do you think is he talking or is he actually manipulating this situation?
He was feeling the presence of the energies. And he set up the camera so that you set it and then you go and sit down.
Uh-huh.
And it'll take a picture all by itself.
Right.
And that's how that shot was taken. He could feel them. He knew they were there. And he doesn't always know what it will be, whether it will be a light phenomena incident or whether it'll be a creature or whether it'll be a dead person. He doesn't know. Sometimes he knows, but sometimes he doesn't.
I remember, Nancy, last month when you were telling me, Jimmy, just go to the website and look at these pictures. Just go. We'll talk. Just go and just look. And my mind was so blown. We all see, yourself included, we see stuff like this not like this, but see pictures all the time where people are claiming one thing or the other. That's fine. But then when you go and you look at this, it's like, what? This is something real. This is not fake.
It is real.
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible. I wish, can he take a
see
picture?
The one with the Buddha's head, the light stripe coming down.
Oh yeah.
What you notice, first of all, there's no light fixture up above that Buddha's head. Period.
I don't know what
That's the first thing everybody tells me. There is no light fixture.
I don't know what I'm looking at.
Secondly, notice that you see how the kitchen behind is soft and fuzz.
Yep.
One of the things that we started to notice, or I started to notice when there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these,
right,
that when there is something anomalous getting ready to occur, at first it would be a yellowy amber color that would come on the photos first. Both of us now, we knew. That meant pretty soon there was going to be weirdness.
Oh,
then this fuzz sort of stuff would happen. And in this case, what we're seeing is the fuzz stuff. Nowadays, what often happens before weird pictures is it gets very dark. The picture will be darker than the actual light in the room or in the field is. It just gets like black sometimes when it's not, when it's daylight or whatever. That last row of shots they were taken with Dr. Roll's camera. That is Dr. Roll with Robert at the special field.
Right.
And this was a brand new camera that Roll had brought with him on purpose. We had to take it out of its box and everything and put it together.
I remember you telling me this.
Chip. And Roll was standing right there as Robert then took 40 or 50 of these pink, orange, blue, these various photos. Those are just a couple of them. Dr. Roll was watching. I was watching, both of us. And Robert doesn't do anything. He just goes click, click, click.
This picture with Robert's eyeball.
Yeah, he's aiming the camera at his own face.
It's incredible. It's truly, truly, truly incredible. And everybody that is listening to my voice right now, if you are not looking at these pictures with this, you're insane, because these are absolutely incredible. And okay, let's go to this last one again. Explain that one, the last one in the row.
The one on that row where Dr. Roll is?
Yeah, the white blobby pinky blue thing.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know what I'm looking
I don't
at.
tell people what I don't know, and I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's hurting my hair. It's just I don't know what I am looking at. So
and you can imagine then what it was like for me all by myself. Robert doesn't see many people. He and I hit it off, which is why it's like this. But I have to come home here with literally hundreds or thousands of such photos every year. And I can't tell anybody because nobody believes me.
Right.
I have to sit here and absorb, trying to understand.
Right.
What in the world? I don't know what it means. What I know is that it's real.
Right. And I want to emphasize with all of our listeners right now, the way that I'm speaking to you now is what Nancy was trying to tell me the first time that we had talked, which was, Jimmy, just go and look. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of pictures of the ghosts, of apparitions, of lights, of UFOs, perfectly clear. And I was like, Nancy, okay, all right, but let's talk about the NVIDIA crop circle. No, Jimmy, you need to understand. And so that's what I'm trying to emphasize with everybody here, because I went back to the studio that night after you and I had talked, Nancy, and I jumped on BLT and talked, and your computers were down at the time, so we couldn't talk on the phone. So, but I spent like 2.5 days on your website, scratching my head, reading, and trying to figure out what exactly I was looking at. Now the photographs are here, so I'm trying to relay to everybody that can hear my voice. You've got to just go and look at these pictures for yourself. You can't really draw a conclusion other than the pictures are authentic. You just don't know what you're looking at, and it's not hocus. It's goofy looking stuff. This is incredible, and I can't put it into words. And there's not a way for me to describe it, Nancy, that I think does it justice. You just have to go and look at these pictures yourself, and they're just incredible. So now let's go to, Nancy, if you would, let's go to the gallery immediately above the lights, which is the gallery called Robert Takes Thousands of Photos of People Who Have Died. Yeah. All right. Now, again, let's just start with the first photograph, and it says, I see dead people, JPEG. What is this? And it's kind of creeping me out, but what is it?
Well, what we ought to do would be easier if you don't start with a little girl.
Oh, okay.
It would be easier if we start with the first one on the top right.
Okay, with the red outline, apparition, yeah. Okay.
We did a lot of photo analysis because people just couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
And that is a New Guinea mudman, it turns out, because we have dozens of these shots in that same creature. And the outline is taken from a photo that we found of a bunch of New Guinea mudmen. And the analyst, who's an MIT-trained photo analyst, made the outline of one of the figures from that photo and then superimposed it along with green registration dots, which you've cut out here so people can't see it.
Right.
But he then would drop that over each of these dozens of images of that same being to show that, in fact, the images are not the same as what was in the photo.
I got
similar,
you.
But they are not the same.
Right.
Same thing with the soldier. Those were taken, I think, in 2004, and the soldier is the same thing. We found an image of soldiers walking along a road in Belgium during the war, and it looked very much like that soldier, that guy, was one of the soldiers in that picture. And so he did the same thing. He made an outline from the photo,
right?
Put the green registration, or in this case, red registration dots at various places on the figure, and then superimposed that over Robert's photos, because Robert was being accused, you see, of photoshopping, or he didn't even have he didn't have a computer until 2006, And when they would say that he Googled things, and he didn't even know what Google was. He didn't have a computer. And these images, those were shot 2 years before he had a computer.
Do you know how creepy this really is? I mean, this is...
No, it's not. And I'm getting this. I want you not to go there.
Well, okay. Well,
and I'll tell you why.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so then you move on to the brown face of the man, number 2 on the top row.
Right.
That's the first time I had been hearing from Robert that he was doing this. And I had seen every time I would go, I would see a lot of the photos. His father would show them to me. But I had never seen him do it. And I don't write anything for our website, the BLT site, until I've seen it.
Right.
I want to make sure I'm telling people the truth. That night, Robert and I were in his little office working on, he had learned how to make compass needles spin. And he could take big metal things and stick them to his head. And I was taking pictures of all this because it was something new. While we were working, suddenly there came a very gentle tap, tap, tap at that door. It was so quiet that I would have ignored it. I wouldn't have known to pay attention. Robert looked up from behind the desk where he was sitting and said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yes." And I knew immediately something was getting ready to happen.
Right.
He came around from his side of the desk. I'm using the camera, you see, at this point. I've been taking pictures of him. He asked me if he can have the camera. I handed it to him. I stood next to him with my head literally touching his, so I could see the LED screen, you see.
Right.
He aims the camera, holds it out in front of his face about 2-3 feet with one hand, waits until he feels the energy is exactly right, and he clicks. That guy's face popped up, and I jumped like I had been shot. I could see nothing between me and that door except for air. And yet that man, and then he came many more times, was clear as a bell on the LED screen.
Wait. I need to understand what you just said. When he was pointing, because now you are freaking me out. You're saying that he was pointing the camera, you're looking at the screen, and at the moment before he pulls the trigger, it's just a shot of the room. He takes the picture, and then boom, on the screen immediately, you can see the picture that was just taken. This guy's face is there.
Correct.
And in the picture, everybody needs to understand what we're looking at. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, hover over home, click on Nancy Talbot, go to the second gallery.
BLT research. Oh no, it says Nancy. You're right.
Yeah, it says Nancy. Okay, so this picture. Who is this guy? And he's also trans. He's also.
This is another one of these instances. In this case, Robert told me that he thought this guy was probably lost, had not yet understood that he was dead, and needed some help to go to the light. He then did what he does. He calls in. There are certain angels that he knows how to call in, and they usually appear as light balls, although not always. And he focused on calling them in to help this man.
Right.
And they did appear in the last photos, and then the man was gone.
So, Nancy, this is not a relative. This is not somebody that they know.
I've never seen him before, and Robert doesn't know who he is either.
Wow. What a crazy... And he looks so forlorn in this picture, and he's looking straight into the lens. And he's also transparent. That's the other...
I mean, if you knew who that was, you'd know who that was.
Exactly. That is...
The picture to the right of him is one of the dead people photos that Robert took with Dr. Roll's camera, with Dr. Roll watching. We thought that might be one of Dr. Roll's colleagues or friends, but he said no, he didn't know who it was. And the picture in the lower left is one of the ones of my brother Bill.
Oh, wow. I remember seeing this
one. That's in broad daylight, as you can see.
Right. And
now, the reason why you are not supposed to get freaked, I understand why you do, but go down to the very bottom of all these pictures you put together where John Lennon is.
Yep.
And the creature.
Yep.
Robert, when he was a child, he didn't know anything different. He has always seen the people who have died, his deceased relatives. He's always seen creatures. He thought everybody did. He didn't know the difference. And it wasn't until a certain age, where it became clear that whatever was going on with him was different. But he learned at some point that if you are one of these people who is open to a larger reality, a larger consciousness, that there are many, multiple, hundreds, millions, I don't know, lots and lots of other consciousnesses that do exist. And some of them are interdimensional, and some of them are angelic, and some of them are extraterrestrial,
Sure.
and some of them are what we maybe don't know what to call them.
Right.
And he learned that some of them were positive, were interested in helping mankind, or in some way in helping us grow. And that others of them, particularly this type you hear about all the time when you hear about abductions,
Right.
they are not interested in helping mankind. They are self-serving. And they are self-serving to the point where they will take advantage of and even hurt humans. Robert will have nothing to do with them. He had a very difficult battle at one point in his growing up when he became aware of this, that there were, once you were open, that all kinds of things could come, you see.
Exactly. And I want to come back to that point, but I'm not going to let you get away. I want to ask you how and if, well, actually, let me say that question.
I'm going to get to these pictures because it'll help you.
Exactly. Let's go to the little girl. Or you want to do John Lennon?
John Lennon and this creature.
Okay, all the way at the bottom of the page, everybody. At the bottom of everything, there's two photographs down by themselves. On the left is John Lennon. On the right is the creature.
Just a being. A being. That's all. We call them just beings.
Okay.
Okay, so
John Lennon.
He went through this time where he had to come to grips with how do you deal with the negative. And he was able, with a great deal of effort and some fear, to finally get himself in a place where he could stop, and he can, any of that kind of influence. He will not allow it to have anything to do with him because his only interest is in using this ability to help people understand that what we see in life is only part of what exists, that when we die, we don't disappear. Our personalities do not disappear. Our souls, our beings, our essence does not disappear. Our bodies, of course, do. And these two pictures are a beautiful example. William Gazecki, who is a filmmaker in L.A. and a friend of mine, went over to see Robert one winter, in the middle of winter, and wanted to document this for himself. And I trust William, so I set up so he could go, and he went. And a number of different people manifested while William was filming. In this case, William has a video camera, and he simply is following Robert around until Robert settles in a spot and focuses on the energy. Robert will have a digital camera. And William focused these entire episodes. There were several of them. But in this case, John Lennon, Robert, remember, was born in 1980. Lennon died in 1980. Robert never knew him and never even knew his music. He knew about the Beatles, of course, but Lennon was never one of his, music fans.
Okay.
I mean, one of his music interests.
Right.
And so he felt an energy present. This was the second or third night that William was there. And William follows him, turns on the video, and just lets it run. And he's aiming at Robert the entire time. And it shows Robert talking to this energy first. And he's asking permission. And is it okay for me to say that? Oh, can I really say that? You hear all this on the video because he's hearing John tell him who he is. And Robert understands that John Lennon was a famous person. And he's embarrassed because he doesn't know Lennon's music. And he apologizes to Lennon out loud in English this time because William is there. And he's saying, I'm so sorry, but I did never really knew your music. And then he says, okay, I will. And he's talking to what looks like air. And then he turns right to the camera, to William, and he says, it's John Lennon. And then he takes his digital camera with the film camera running the entire time. And he takes shot after shot after shot after shot. And John is in a whole bunch of them. And interspersed between John is this other being. And it's a star child of some sort, Robert says, who is just a total being of love. And because Lenin was such an enlightened person, such an enlightened human, this is one of his, I guess pal would not be the right word. It's one of his associates in the other world. And if you look at all of the images, you see John a couple shots, then you'll see this being, then John again, then the being.
Right.
But it's a gentle and loving thing. It is not frightening. And the first time you see it, it is startling.
It is very startling, and the eyes, but you can now that you've explained it like that, okay, I feel a little bit calmer, but it is still. You know why it's scary, Nancy?
It's only because you don't understand.
You don't understand. You don't know what you're looking at. It doesn't. You can't relate anything into the real world that you're familiar with this shot.
I've been with him so many times out in these fields. If something wanted to hurt either one of us, we have been in the middle of nowhere so many times at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning that Lord knows it could have done whatever it wanted, and it has never. And I think if you scroll up this page to the UFO photos,
right,
I'm going to show you something else and tell you the story because it will help you absolutely.
Let's save that because we've got to talk about this little girl picture.
Oh, the little girl.
Yeah.
That's at Easter. 1 year. Easter is very important to Robert. He's not religious. His country is Catholic. He himself and his family, they are not formally religious, but he's very spiritually inclined. And so Easter is very important for him. And I went that year just because I wanted to be with him at Easter. And that year, what happened primarily were children's photos. And it was my camera in every case. And in every case, I was right with him, standing right next to him. And he would tell me sometimes before some of the shots, he would see them in his head before they actually appeared on the photos. And several times he made me jump because when the image would come and we would both see it,
right,
he'd say, that's what I was seeing. That's what I was seeing. After all of these years, with this happening for so many years, he is still as thrilled, as excited, as grateful to the larger consciousness for this. It's really quite humbling to see. And this little girl was one of my favorites from that session. We don't know who she is. We don't know when she lived, although my guess would be perhaps some time ago.
It looks
Those
like
handmade clothes,
before 1940, maybe World War II and before.
I would think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. There's nothing modern about her at all.
No. And the pictures can represent all different time periods. And I mean, really, we know who some of them are, and some of his clients, you see, for many years, people have been coming to him, and they bring their own cameras.
Right.
And they come often to ask about their deceased relatives. And he says, well, bring your camera. And then he does a reading. And after the reading, he'll say, do you want me to take photos? Because some people do and some people don't. And if they do, they hand him the camera. And they're right there with him while he then shoots pictures. And it's always the people they came to talk about.
Nancy,
and these are people Robert has never seen before in his life.
Nancy, I've got a question that is coming in. I've got two coming in from my producers here at the studio. And one of them, they're asking, one of our listeners, Dave, is asking about a Barbury Castle in Wiltshire, UK. Does that ring a bell?
Barbury Castle Triangle?
I guess so. That's all that I have here.
There are many formations that have occurred at a location called Barbury Castle.
Okay.
Many.
Okay.
So again, I have to know which one.
Right.
I mean, it's simply a location, and there are many, many circles that have occurred there.
Okay. And next, a couple of listeners are asking about the door handle in the pic with the little girl. And that's
it's in front of her hand in one of the photos.
Okay.
In all the others, again, you have to go to the Vandenbroek case on the BLT website.
Okay.
And then scroll down to the apparition photos report.
Right.
And you will see many photos of her. In only one, her hand is behind the handle. In the others, her hand is in front.
Huh. It's a and I'm sorry, but one of the emotion. I'm a dad. Okay. Before I was a dad, children didn't affect me as much or in the same way. But now, when I hear or see children like this, it affects me emotionally. And this is a very emotional shot. She's looking off into the distance and she looks alone. It's just, it's a very emotional photograph.
Before you're born, you're alone. And when you die, you're alone as far as people go. But you're not alone when you consider the spirit.
Incredible photograph.
You're never alone if you consider that part of reality.
Right. Okay.
If you deny that part of reality exists, then yes, I can see how it would make you feel terrible. But if for you it is possible or even probable that there is a larger loving consciousness, then we're never alone.
How did you feel when, just going to get a little personal, but when you saw the photographs of your brother, did you start to maybe understand a little bit about the other side, or that maybe, to just ask you directly, that this is real and that your brother's trying to communicate with you in some way, and did he, and how did you feel about that?
He did. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you the story.
Well, I don't want you to get emotional on me. Don't lose it, because I would.
I won't, but
okay.
I'll tell you. But maybe this will make the same point I want people to understand about this.
Okay.
My brother had lived in the middle of the South Pacific for the 20 years or so before he died on a little island called Palau.
Okay.
He didn't really dig the States. And I hadn't seen him except once in a while for years. So it was not like we were very close at the time of his death. We were very close growing up. When he died, I wanted, there was, our family's kind of a weird bunch. Anyhow, there was a thing, we all got together and everything. But I wanted personally, because my brother loved the Beach Boys. He grew up when the Beach Boys were famous, and he loved the ocean. And so I had it in my mind that I would go and buy a Beach Boys album and borrow somebody's car that had a CD. I got a 26-year-old Volvo, and it doesn't have a CD player in it.
Okay.
But I was going to borrow somebody's car, drive down to the ocean somewhere. I'm in Cambridge, which is right near the water in Massachusetts, some night, and just play the Beach Boys 4-bill to say my personal goodbye. By the time I got to Holland, I hadn't done that. And when these pictures, the first 50 appeared that first day, that's one of the first ones, do you notice his ear and how it's sticking out kind of funny?
Yep.
His ear did not stick out like that. And I didn't quite notice it that first day. But after those first 50 images appeared, I thought, okay, I have his mother's car. It's got a CD player in it. And okay, I'm not right near the ocean, but Bill's clearly, or his spirit seems to be here. So I went into the closest town, got a Beach Boys CD, and the next day, Robert and I went back to the field with the Beach Boys CD so that I could do what I had wanted to do all along. And we went a little bit later in the day, but it was still daylight. And I backed the car all the way in that field as far as I could get it, opened the doors wide, so the speakers would go out into the field.
Right on.
And I put the Beach Boys on and cranked it.
Right on.
And right away, this music comes out, and I can see my brother as we were when we were kids.
Wow.
And see him doing the twist to it. And this is all in my head,
Right.
I'm really feeling the connection with the Bill that I remembered. Meanwhile, Robert is taking pictures.
And all
of those pictures, Bill appeared again, but the ear was now normal.
Oh, wow.
And later, when I got home and noticed this in detail and thought about it, I mean, if you knew my brother, he was very charismatic, He was extraordinarily gallant in his dying. And it would have been just like him, if it were possible, to say, Nan, for the love of God, go get the damned album. I got things to do.
Right.
I can't do it until you've said your goodbye.
Right.
Go get the album and play it for me. And that ear sticking out, maybe that was all he could do to make me do it. All I know is that while I was playing the music and afterward, all those photos, his ear is back to normal, and he never appeared again.
Wow! And did you feel like he communicated? I mean, or let me back up.
I felt like I had said my goodbye as I wanted to. And I'm still not positive whether he was there or not.
Well, that was my question. Do you think that he received your vibe, that you have, put this to bed?
I hope he knows. I hope, but I don't know.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Now, okay, listen, Nancy, I'm not going to take any more commercial breaks. We've got another 15 minutes or so, and we haven't talked about UFOs at all. We've got this batch of UFO photographs, and then we're just going to jump ahead. I want to get to the 2012 Dutch crop circle case because of the ET photographs that are in that batch of stuff. So, how
much time do we have to still go?
We've got about 15, 16 minutes before we close out the show. So let's deal with these.
Why don't we go to the 2012 thing and because I want to end with this heart.
Oh, you want to end with the heart? You want to come back to that? Okay, fantastic. Let's do that. Okay, so everybody, let's do this. So this is my little surprise. So go back to the home page. We got to get out of these. I've got a special hidden link here that I didn't tell anybody. Go back to the home page, scroll down, and where it says BLT Research on the bottom of the page, where you see the galleries, very simply click on BLT Research. That is actually a link that will take you to.
Where underneath the gallery? You mean the one that BLT on top of the gallery?
Yep. Just click on that.
Nothing's.
Oh yeah, it is.
That's coming up. Oh, okay.
How do you like that? Huh? Was I sneaky?
Sexy.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going to take you to part 2 of the 2012 crop circle season overview page. Now everybody is there, I am sure. Now, at the top of the page, it's one of my favorite photographs, by the way, Nancy, is of this, I don't know how to explain, indigo is the right way, I guess, purple, in this blue alien face. And as we scroll down, now, there's some things that we need to talk about before we get to the aliens and the beams of light and so forth, is the crop circle formations that were here. And let's briefly talk about.
I can do this quick. The diagram shows you a crop circle which had occurred in a field near Robert's house.
Okay.
You scroll down a little bit farther, and it's a photograph of that crop circle,
right,
with a blue light ball that our field worker photographed when he didn't see it, but when he was photographing the circle, the blue light ball appeared.
And you can see it right there. It's right in the middle of the photograph. There's an arrow pointing to it, and it's an incredible shot because, and again, I started to talk about this at the beginning of the show, and I knew we were going to get to this later, but in that, this is not man-made. You can look and tell this is not somebody trying to be an artistic urban artist, boy wonder guy with a plank of wood. This is something that is not man-made. I was going to say natural. And this has those swirls that I was talking about.
Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. Now, this next photograph below that, this is an aerial shot, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually taken with a kite. We can't afford a plane, so we put up kites.
Okay. Nicely done. Nicely done. And then the photograph below that is the right-hand side of the aerial shot, right? This is right? And now tell me about this swirled, the one right below that. Is this the very center of the largest circle?
I'm not sure. Let me look. I'm not. Does it say underneath where
It says it had several centers with twisted
several?
tufts.
So it's one of them. I don't know which one exactly.
That is an incredible shot, and again, like almost everything that you have shown us tonight and presented, I don't know what I'm looking at. I've never seen anything quite like this. And
if you had sat in that living room and seen what I saw that first night, you would already be prepared to not understand.
Nicely said. Nicely said. Yeah, this is. I can guarantee you that this was not found in the NVIDIA crop circle. Is what.
No.
Okay, now we're going to get into some pretty fantastic, extraordinary stuff. And these two light beams, of which you have quite a few photographs like this at BLT Research.
There are tons of them in the UFO photos report.
Yes, there are, and the stuff above the cars and stuff. But these two photographs here, they take your breath away. Now, the top one, you can see the field and the circle illuminated a little bit at the bottom of the photograph. But what is it that we are looking at here?
Guy me.
Is it a ship? Is it
all you can see is what you can see.
Well, don't make me jump to my own conclusions because
I have to, honey, because I can't. I'd give it to you if I had it. I tell people everything I do know. I do not say things I don't know.
Right.
People need to process. Remember, I've been doing this for 18, 19 years with him now.
Right.
I do it very slowly, very carefully, because I don't want to fool myself either.
Right. Well, it looks to me, then I'm going to draw my own conclusion. It looks to me that you've got some kind of ship or plasma shaped shift or a ship shaped in light. I don't know how to explain what I'm looking at, but there is a beam of light coming down from this ship or from this plasma formation of some kind, and it is forming a crop circle. That's what I see, and it looks very deliberate, and it doesn't look faked. If Steven Spielberg was having a crack at it, he might be able to do something like this, but that's what it looks like to me.
Spielberg couldn't do what Robert does.
It's that good. I don't know how to, I can't really describe it, but it looks to me like that is what is going on here. But then, and we're going to end the show with these next batch of photographs, the ET head popping up and looking into the lens of this camera.
And what's important here is the circle had happened. Robert knew it was coming. He always knows. And he I think Roy, the field worker in this case, drove, because Robert doesn't drive. They drove to this place and did find the crop circle right where Robert said it was going to be. But this had happened sometime before. A local Dutch filmmaker, who's kind of a jerk actually, wanted to interview Robert in the crop circle that had just happened. And so Robert agreed, and he and his friend Stan, and I guess maybe Roy was there, and the television guy and his camera guy and all these other people went to the field where this circle had appeared a week or so earlier. And what they wanted was to give Robert, the producer wanted to give Robert his digital camera. No, there's not Robert's, but the producer's. And with the video running, have Robert take pictures with that digital camera while he was standing inside the circle. Now, you got to remember that Robert never asks for anything. Robert is willing to receive what this larger reality chooses to send, as long as it is not threatening or negative. He will allow anything else to work through him, use him as a medium, but he doesn't ask. And most people don't understand this. He never asks. Well, once or twice he has, but usually he doesn't. So the guy wants him to do this. Robert is willing. He tries. If you ask him to do something, he will try. But he'll tell you, maybe something will happen, maybe it won't. I don't know. So he went in the circle. He was standing in the circle with the producer's camera, and he took two pictures. And these are the two pictures. That first one is duplicated, the original on top, and then I've heightened it. I've lightened it up in the second one. And then the second picture, which was just a second shot, again, the original is on top, and the one that I've lightened up is below it. And there was that beautiful blue indigo beam. Robert didn't see it. He didn't know whether it was going to come or not. But there it was. And unfortunately, the filmmaker did not keep his camera running after Robert had taken the shots. He didn't do it while they were going back to see what was on them. And that's why there is a filmmaker going there right now as we speak. We're doing this again because we've got a very smart filmmaker now who will be videotaping Robert doing whatever happens, and he will not turn the video camera off ever so that we don't lose the proof behind an image like this.
Right.
Everybody was there watching Robert. Everybody saw this happen, but unfortunately the guy with the video turned it off slightly prematurely, and so we can't prove in this case, except for the witnesses, that Robert actually did this.
Extraordinary photographs, and
and very interesting looking creature.
Well, it is, and it doesn't look typical. You know, that's the thing. It doesn't look typical. Well, you know, the big eyes and stuff, but the color, it just doesn't look classic, and that's where I kind of get freaked out. And if I
have literally hundreds of photos of creatures. We haven't put them out yet because we're trying to have people understand that we don't want them to be frightened. There is nothing to be frightened of as best we know. No evidence whatsoever. And that's why I wanted to end with the UFO photos. If we can go back there.
Yeah, okay, all right. Everybody, and I will have links up for BLT research to go back and do all of this. That nothing's going anywhere. So you can go back and check these photographs out. Let's go back to jimmychurchradio.com and head back over to the Nancy Talbot page. I'm sorry for the complication. We just have so much information tonight, everybody. This is just the way it is. And so hover over the home button on Jimmy Church Radio, click on Nancy Talbot, and we're going to go to the first gallery with all of the UFO pictures on it. All extraordinary, by the way. So let's everybody get settled in. Okay, you know where we're at. We've been here already. And you want to do the heart photograph. You want to end on that. So
I just want to end with that because it will help people understand what's going on.
Okay, so let's talk really quick. Let's go. Let's talk about the other.
2008 and 2009. Robert has seen dozens of crop circles form. I've been with him on 2 of those occasions and saw them form myself. But he has seen dozens. And sometimes light balls, sometimes tubes of light, sometimes flashes of light, sometimes no light phenomena at all. Wide range of what you see or don't see when they form. Up until 2008, we almost never discussed or in any way even thought about UFOs. As far as we were concerned, the UFO phenomenon, as it is generally discussed, particularly this whole abduction thing, had nothing to do with the crop circles or with what was happening around Robert. But for some reason in 2008, no matter what camera he was using, and this represents in the lower left, the second one, that's Dr. Roll's camera. The upper right is another crop circle researcher in Holland, Peter van Leerhoven. The ones on the bottom, one is Roy's camera. One is another guy's camera. The one you can see through is my camera. The white little one sitting down in the circle itself, that's my camera.
Okay.
The one with all the light balls, which is one of my favorite, the white one.
Yep.
That's also my camera. Well, the story behind the one with the heart is this. There have been hundreds of these UFO photos that year, and we were wondering, what in the world is with these UFO photos all of a sudden? How come they're coming? And we decided that if the purpose of crop circles and many other anomalous phenomena is to help people open their minds to this larger reality, that there is a larger consciousness, there is a lot more out there, and much of it is gentle and loving, that you can't use a religious symbol because there are dozens and dozens of different religions. We've came to the conclusion that the most clearly recognized symbol of the other worldwide is probably UFO images. And the fact that these images were appearing in every single camera he used that year, and in 2009, there were UFOs all over the place. We figured that what was intended here was to communicate not particularly UFOs and whatever people currently think about UFOs in detail, more that this is a symbol, an emblem, which indicates the other. Okay, the last night that year that I was in Holland with Robert, we went, as we always do, back to the fields, and I go to say thank you for whatever has happened, for whatever amazing things I've seen that year.
Right.
And if you're looking now at the one of the heart with the UFO in it, we had gone, this is in the UFO Photos Report, Part 5. We had been back to this field, and it wasn't really as dark as that image indicates. The circle, which had come while I was flying across the Atlantic, and which I knew was happening, by the way, it was in that field, but it was partially cut by now. And I was just talking to the air, thank you for all of these wonderful things that have happened. And as we started to leave the field, Robert said, wait a minute. And he turned around, he said, let me take a few more. And the first 4 shots he took in a row, I was playing music, by the way, to the fields, music I love, as a thank you present. The first 4 images were huge, big hearts. It took up the whole screen. Now, there's no way on the face of the earth you can miss the image of a heart. I mean, it's pretty, I don't care what language you speak, you know what it means.
Right.
And I looked at him and was just amazed. I thought, oh, nobody's ever going to believe this. It's like, oh, my goodness. I knew what it meant. I could feel what it meant. And then we started to walk a little farther out. And then suddenly he said, wait a minute, asked for the camera again, turned around, took 4 more shots. And in those 4, the hearts were present again, but there was a UFO right in the middle of them. And we both think that the message is very clear. These UFOs, the UFO concept doesn't mean fear, it means love.
That's exactly what the picture says. And
that's what it did to me.
I mean, it's obvious, and there's a little cruiser disc right in the middle of it too, just to let you know where it's coming from.
I don't know. I'm not a UFO.
So I'm not an
expert in that area.
You don't have to be to see what you're looking at.
What I know is that there is a lot of fear-based stuff about UFOs, and what I also know, because of Robert, is that there is there's a huge amount of evidence that if the fear-based thing exists, and we believe it probably does,
right,
it's a tiny bit of the spectrum, that the majority of the spectrum is not the fear-based stuff. It's interested in helping. And every bit of evidence that I've got, I wouldn't go in these fields. You can absolutely trust me. If I thought I was going to have an encounter with something that was going to hurt me, I'd never go to Holland again. I'm a chicken. I would never take that chance. The only reason I can walk around these fields in the middle of the night with him and nobody anywhere near us is because I know that I'm okay. Nothing's going to hurt me.
What an extraordinary evening I have had. And I hope that you have enjoyed yourself, Nancy, as much as I have. And I know that everybody out there. Well, you know what? No, it's you. It's not me. I'm just along for the ride. But listen, we're at the end of the show. So if you want, just stay with me and you'll hear us. Let's just roll this and let the network pick us up. We have literally got 1 minute left. So just stay with me, Nancy, and then you're going to hear me close out the show. I'm just going to do it now in real time. So Nancy, don't go anywhere. Okay, this is how we do it. It'll remind you of the old days. But here we go. All right, fade to black. What a great interview! Thank you, Nancy, for coming in and sharing with us for the last 3 hours. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Spooky South Coast with my man, Tim Weisberg. Special thanks to Keith Rowland, as always. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kumarian. Show was produced by Hilton J. Palm. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. The D is there to separate him from all the other Mark Kovars out there in the world. Music that you are listening to right now is and always is Doug Aldrich from Whitesnake. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We'll see you tomorrow night when we have on Bryce Zabel live from the Berlin Film Festival. Everybody, you have a good night. Don't forget about the contest and all of the Easter eggs. That's it for now. I am out of here. Stay with me, Nancy. I'm going to say good night to you after the show. Stay with us.